for May 2021. David, would you please conduct the roll call?
Mayor Mays.
Here.
Council President Rosner, I know he is not here tonight. Councilor Browse.
Here.
Councilor Garland.
Here.
Councilor Griffin.
Here.
Councilor Scott. Councilor Young.
Here.
Committee Chair Taylor.
Here.
Vice Chair Painter. I know she was going to be maybe run into some conflicts tonight.
Okay.
Brian Fairbanks.
Present.
Matt Kaufman.
Here.
Paul Mayer.
Here.
Thomas Sherwood.
Here.
Katie Strode.
Here.
Perfect.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve the December 10th, 2020 Budget Committee meetings minutes?
I move we approve the meeting minutes.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that. This is
Okay.
Sean Garland.
Okay. Oh, actually, David, was I, oh, now it's David's turn.
Yep, the first order of business, and as per ORS statute 294.149, the Budget Committee is required to elect the presiding officer at the first meeting when they receive the budget message.
Excuse me, David.
Yes?
We took a motion and a second, but we didn't vote on those minutes.
Oh, okay. I apologize.
Okay, all in favor? Please say
Aye.
aye. All opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, ayes have it.
Sorry about that.
No,
Sorry.
thank you, Councilor Young. Okay, so the first order of business is we need to elect a presiding officer. This is under ORS statute. And I'd like to request the current chair, Nancy Taylor, to open the floor for nominations for the chair position for this budget cycle, fiscal year 21-22.
Okay, I open the
Committee
floor for
members,
nominations.
just please refrain from voting. Just a little note on the nominations until all nominations have been made and accepted / declined.
Okay, I open the floor for nominations.
I nominate Nancy Taylor.
Okay. Any other nominations?
Nancy, are you interested in doing it again?
That's a good question. Sure, if no one else wants to do it, I'll do it again. But if we have somebody that's interested, I would be very interested in handing over the reins. Mr. Sherwood?
I would like to nominate Katie Strode.
Sure, I'll do it.
Okay,
Just since you said that, Nancy, that you'd be happy to turn it over to somebody else.
yeah, you know, I'm getting old and it's about time for younger people to step in, so.
Well, it's good to spread it around.
Any more nominations? Okay, can I close the nominations for chair?
Yes, and then
And I'm going to withdraw mine, which Katie, that means it's you.
Okay, so am I
How should we
ready?
vote?
Yes.
If there's only one person, why should we vote?
It's just
I'll
procedural.
redo it.
yeah.
Okay, then all in
Withdraw.
favor of Katie as chair,
Aye.
Aye.
all opposed? Ayes have it. Now, do we need to elect a vice chair?
Yes, and so now I would like to request Chair Strode to open the floor for nominations for the vice chair position for the budget cycle 21-22.
Okay,
Oh.
do we have any nominations for vice chair?
I
I'll-
nominate Mr. Sherwood.
I accept.
Do we have any other nominations?
Pops, did you nominate? Were you nominating somebody? Brian?
Mr. Sherwood is fantastic.
Agreed.
He has my full support.
Okay, so if there are no other nominations, we can take a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Hi.
Aye.
All opposed? All right, so Mr. Sherwood is our vice chair. And then do I keep going, David?
Yeah, so now you just kind of
Okay.
that little blip under the public comment.
Let me get my notes here. Is this about, do I read the meeting format part?
Yeah, we're pursuant to House Bill 4.
Okay, so pursuant to House Bill 4212 for 2020, this meeting will be conducted electronically and will be live streamed on YouTube. Citizens' comments must be submitted in writing to the finance director's email address. Clearly state that it is intended as a citizen comment and must be received 24 hours in advance. Given we are conducting this meeting virtually, I would like to ask David Bodway, the city's finance director, if we have received any comments.
There was no public comments.
Okay. And so then if a motion is made to vote, okay. If a motion is made to vote on an issue, wait until the motion is second, then call for a discussion on the motion. After discussion is called for a vote, all in favor say aye. All opposed.
Perfect. Now we can move on to new business if everyone's okay with that. So under new business, we're going to start with the budget overview, and the soon to leave us Joseph Gall is going to give his budget message. This will kind of be his last budget meeting here with the city. I wish him the best of luck at Clean Water Services. So Joe, with that, I'll turn it over to you, and then I'll take over with the 5-year forecast and kind of my presentation.
Yeah, if you can put that the beginning of your slideshow, that would be helpful.
Yep.
So I want to start out tonight's meeting and with an apology to the committee for this budget getting to you so late in the process. Normally, you would have had this budget a couple weeks ago, and I know you did not receive it in a timely manner, which may make your jobs a little harder because you didn't have the time to go through it in advance. So I apologize for that in terms of pulling this together. We anticipate a number of committee members couldn't be here tonight. That will be continuing conversations at the next meeting. So with that, I normally do not review in depth the budget message that I put together. It is a very similar format to what you have seen in the past. Some of the highlights, which we'll get into over the next 1 to 3 weeks, are some significant additions in staffing, especially in broadband, which the council is fully aware of as a council goal, but some of the citizen committee members may not be aware of that. That's a significant investment for the future for our city that we'll talk through at length. I think the other thing that's important that David's going to talk about is how we have survived COVID and what that's done in terms of our spending for this current fiscal year, which is closing. We are going to end the year financially in a better position than we projected, and there are reasons for that David will go through. That's an important piece of this puzzle, as always. And I think the heart of this process is really getting into each department and going over what their projected expenses are and the increases and answering your questions. So unless there's general questions at this point about the overall budget, I'd like to just get into the process. So.
Joe, in your budget message, I see a couple things that are different. On page 4, you have personal services account for 17.3 million at 15.6 higher. And on page 5, it says 13.1 million and 9.6 higher. Is that a mistake or what's
So
the
let me look at
discrepancy?
page 4, Paul. So
Yeah, so when you look at page 4, that takes into account basically the entire city, while page 5, when you look at that 13.1 million, you're just looking at the general fund.
yep, thank you, David. And that we've broken it out that way every year. This is the same format. Usually the numbers change, so that's the difference, Paul. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, I get it now.
Okay. Any other questions specifically to the budget message that we can answer?
Okay, with that, I can, if there's no other questions on the budget message, I can kind of take over and start going through the presentation.
Okay.
I'd like to apologize too for the tardiness of getting this budget out. I do have a solution though, but we'll talk about that when we get to finances budget. Anyways, let's take a look at the 5-year forecast. Can everyone see the presentation on my screen? Can everyone see the screen? Perfect. Okay, so let's take a look at the 5-year forecast. On the left is the current forecast, what you see in your budget books. On the right, that's how we forecasted last spring. You can see there's a significant difference. And one thing I just would want to note, and I'm going to get to it here in a minute, is what would this forecast, this current forecast look like if we did not have any of that CARES funding? Because we received about $1.8 million in CARES funding. So when you look at this federal revenue, you have the CARES funding, which I like to call is money we received under the Trump administration. And then we have the ARPA money, which is coming to the city, and that's from the Biden administration. So if we were to take out this whole entire forecast, this current forecast, that 1.8 million, just about 1.8 million of CARES funding, this is what the 5-year forecast would look like. And you can see we're all the way down to 6%. I'm just going to back it up to the screen, but because of that 1.8 million, that was a significant amount of money that we received, we're actually projected at the end of 5 years to be at a fund balance of 16%. Now we're still below that threshold, that comfort level that the budget committee and city council like to have. They like to target that 20%. So we are dipping below that, and you can see, you know, a lot of this one-time revenue from the federal government, we're still on a slow, steady decline over the next 5 years. So what has changed? So why such a big difference? Well, July 1st, 2020, the beginning general fund balance came in just about $463,000 higher than what we projected last spring. And, you know, we went through the process of, we went through multiple rounds of projections. One was prior to COVID. Then once COVID hit, we had to go through projections again because no one understood. And we didn't know how long this pandemic was going to be and what the results of operations were going to be. So we went through multiple iterations, projections. Also, I've already discussed this, but I don't know if you folks remember last spring, graciously, the city council decided to give out $200,000 to businesses for that first round of grant programs. It was done through a supplemental budget in April. And we were actually reimbursed that $200,000. That was eligible reimbursement costs. But at the time we prepared this budget, we had no claim to the money. We didn't know that we were going to get reimbursed this money. So that was kind of $200,000 in unexpected revenue. And then furthermore, we were also actually reimbursed just a little under 1.6 million in eligible COVID related costs, which is a significant amount. And that's why you see such a stark change in the general fund forecast. And before I get into my next slide, our expected savings is actually just about $300,000 in this current fiscal year we're in now. And I'll kind of break down those numbers here in a second. So overall, you can see the general fund is expecting to increase quite a bit compared to where we thought it was going to be.
Can I ask a question really quick, David?
Yes.
I just had a quick question on the CARES Act funding. I know in the budget message, you guys have laid out the positions that you're adding, and I know there's like 3 or 4 of them that are for general fund. Are any of those being like technically from the CARES fund where you've like backfilled general fund operations to fund these positions, or?
No, none of that. None of that is basically CARES funding. I guess you can say we used one-time fund balance. Maybe when you look at, okay, we were looking to add the IT manager because the current IT director, he needs to shift his focus on the broadband and just the growth. When we get to that, you'll see this significant talking points and kind of the change in that budget. And so really, when you look at it, we would like to add an IT manager position, but now more time of these positions that were currently being charged to IT in the general fund are now being allocated to broadband. So it's not like we're adding, I want to say, one full FTE, even though we are, but now folks are allocating their time differently. But yeah, no, none of the positions are being filled with that CARES Act.
Okay, I just was curious if you guys had received all this CARES money and then it was recorded in the general fund, and then that's why it looked like the general fund had such a large surplus. But I think later on when I was looking, you recorded a lot of that money in the grants fund. So.
Well, actually, the CARES money is reported in the general fund. All that that 1.8 million is reported in the general fund because that's where the expenditures occurred and that's where the eligible expenditures were. But under this ARPA money, the city is scheduled, and when we get into the grant funds, you'll see this, a little over $4 million we're expected to receive through the Biden administration from the ARPA money. And that could be used to backfill lost revenue if we wanted to, revenue gaps, or it could be used to build infrastructure. But we have 3 years to spend this money. And so there's when you look at the general fund forecast, there's no need to make a rash decision of, hey, let's spend all this money right now. Let's take our time, see how things go. Hopefully this pandemic's going to end this summer. We're going to open up in July, but you have these variants out there. You never know what could happen. So, a decision was made. Let's park this money into in the grants fund and really take our time and decide. We have 3 years to decide how we want to spend this money.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
David, I had a question also.
Yep.
Counselor Young here. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that second round of the CARES Act funding, the 1.5 million, part of the reimbursable or the eligible COVID-related expenses was public safety, correct? When you went through all that fine, small print, you discovered that. And so we were able to get reimbursed for some of our public safety cost expenses, payroll, which would have originally been a normal cost anyways, right? So that definitely helped our budget out, I would think.
Yeah, it did. And, the federal government was really relaxed on, public safety and having to track their time because they're considered frontline workers. So, I mean, they're really, frontline responders to this pandemic. So yes, we were fortunate to be able to get as much as we did that second round.
Well, I really applaud David for catching that. I'm not sure every jurisdiction did catch that, but we were able to. And so thank you for that, David.
Oh, you're very welcome. That's my job. So just kind of some talking points, just food for thought, other reasons why the general fund is looking so great. When we go through projections, we're projecting, okay, we're going to have positions filled for the whole year. Well, that didn't always happen, whether it's positions open up in public works or the police department trying to fill some of their positions. When we have unfilled positions, those are savings to the general fund because most of those positions are general funded. And as I've already talked about, when I sent out that email, I said, roughly the general fund, you're looking about $1.4 million estimated in revenue losses from COVID. Well, yes, in total it's 1.4 million, but when we did our projections last year and when we prepared our budget, we are already factoring in not bringing in the kind of money we did. So that was already built into our projections and to preparing the budget. So Joe and I and the rest of the city staff, we prepared a balanced budget based off of, the revenue gaps. Now, we didn't think it was going to be as significant as it was, but, still, we already did factor in some of that revenue loss in there. And when we look at current year projections, the fiscal year we're in right now, 2021, you know, we budgeted revenue a little over 15 million. Yes, we're going to be a little short. We are projecting that we're only going to bring in almost 14.8 million. This is excluding the CARES money. I'm trying to pull the CARES money out there just to kind of show you this is what we budgeted and this is what we're projecting. Take out all the new money. And then for expenditures, we're going to have a savings. We budgeted expenditures almost 15.8 million, but we're projecting not even to spend 15.1 of that. So operations have been shut down for this year. So there is cost savings by us having operations shut down. So we're not spending the money we thought we were. You know, when we start going through individual budgets and the budget detail, you'll see travel and training was pretty much just zero across the board, almost on everyone, because no one was traveling or doing any training, and just other areas. You know, the departments were very prudent in their spending, which is going to give us a positive effect of just about $300 on the general fund balance that we didn't think so last year when we prepared our projections. And also some great news that we received. I don't know if the budget committee understands or realizes, you know, PERS, they give us all these projection spreadsheets where, you know, last year when we were projecting, okay, where our PERS rate's going to be, there actually came in a lot lower. And that was all due to that new bill that was passed. And so for tier 1 and 2, the rate actually came in 7.27% lower. For the general services, you know, tier 3, 4.95% lower. And for the police and fire, the tier 3, 5.22% lower. So over the course of the 5 years, that has a significant impact because, you know, rates are starting to, you know, they're not spiking quite what they are. And we're going to start seeing them actually hopefully flatten out now in the next biennium in another 2 years. And when we get to non-departmental, that there's a significant amount of revenue there, or courts, those are going to be 2 budgets I'm going to kind of go through. I took a very conservative approach when projecting revenues. I was very conservative on that, and I can kind of walk you through some numbers. So I just want to let the committee know that just with all this unknown, I was very conservative in the way I approached this budget. And so with that, there's going to kind of be a little different format. This was kind of a great idea, and we'll see how the committee feels about this presentation. We're going to kind of walk through each department in the general fund, you know, the group by administration, community services, community development, public safety, and public works. But it's a consistent slideshow that you're going to see. If you folks want to dig down the numbers, you know, we can be more than happy to do that. But before I begin, I know that it's about 6:30, so I just want to open it up for any discussion on the 5-year forecast. If anybody has any questions for me, and then when we do get into the individual departments budgets in the general fund, I just write the request, can we move public safety up first before administration, just because the chief has another meeting to get to at 7 o'clock. But before the committee answers that, I would just like to open it up to see if there's any questions on my 5-year forecast. So if there's no questions, how is the committee okay with allowing public safety to go first? Okay, so I'm going to be scrolling through probably multiple slides here just to get the public safety, because we kind of I did them in order, just not knowing whether the committee would allow it. So let me, and with that, I'll turn it over to Jeff and Ty.
Well, good evening, members of the Budget Committee. We meet again once or twice a year, right? So I just wanted to again start off really quickly, and then I'm going to turn it over to Captain Ty Hanlon. So as many of you know, Ty has kind of served as our budget manager for the last several years. This started out as an opportunity for him to gain some experience in that role, and frankly, he's just done a great job. And so for the sake of continuity, and so he just does that with my input and obviously coordination. But so with that, I will be here if you have any questions of me. Otherwise, I will turn it over to Ty.
Good evening, everybody. Again, my name is Ty Hanlon. I'm one of the captains here. Just so I can answer the question early on regarding my eye, because I can see it myself right now. I sustained the black eye during a training exercise, so I'm on the mend, but that may be why I look a little funny. As far as our budget goes, so obviously this year is nothing unique to what the police department has faced the last few years, and that is really across the board. We've been pretty steady. You've seen an increase in some of those areas, and I want to talk about some of those line items specifically, but a lot of it, I hate to call it status quo, but there are some that are that. But the highlights that I really want to touch base on that you're going to see an increase, and probably the first line that you're going to see is 6209, and that's in our training budget. Right now we have 27 sworn officers plus our 3 administrative personnel, our CSO, and our newly acquired reserves, and they all take an extensive amount of training specifically set by the state. This last year, we weren't able to do a lot of that, unfortunately. And as you're all aware, there's a lot more, I think, expectations regarding the police department and community expectations of the services we provide. And those they cost money. Unfortunately, we have to catch up in some of our training that we weren't able to do because we couldn't do it in person, such as defensive tactics, even some of our firearms training. We're trying to catch up, and we're trying to be progressive in the areas of mental health and the cultural diversity and defensive tactics as well, and how we're controlling subjects. So there's a lot going on. Unfortunately, the size of our department doesn't allow us to have a dedicated training division. So we need to bring either those professionals in, or we need to send our officers out. And I think that increase will hopefully address and deal with most of those things. The other thing that I want to bring to your attention is I talked about the reserves, and I think it's important that not only do we have them, but they're a great tool and an asset to the department, and we're finding out even more so in our hiring process. We've gone through a couple cycles now of trying to hire police officers, and it's been very difficult. And I'll just give you a quick example of our last one. I think we had 84 applicants, and the chief can correct me if I was wrong, but out of those we were able to hire 1 qualified applicant, and that just happened to be a reserve with us. So we're finding that if we're investing upfront in our reserves and in our programs, we're getting good qualified candidates who want to be in our community, who have already vested time and energy for free with us, and we know who they are. And some of those costs up front with vests and equipment, I think our return on investment is going to be tenfold in what I'm seeing right now with just trying to get qualified applicants in here. So we're going to try and continue to go down that road as well, just to see if we can hire those applicants that are going to serve our community. The next increase that you probably saw was in our 6216. Some of our, sorry, I got to put my glasses on. Hey, Ty, and
Yeah.
for the future, when you're, just to help everyone, you're on 66B in the budget book.
Oh, sorry.
Just, I'm sure everyone got there, but just in case some of the budget committee members don't know where we are in the budget book, I think if you can refer to the pages, that would be helpful.
Yeah, I can't. You said 66B?
Yeah.
I can't see my pages on my screen, so hopefully everybody's there. Is there any questions on that before I can jump to the next line? Perfect. And I'm not going to go through every line. I just want to kind of highlight some of the ones where you may see some increases and see some, maybe have some questions. Software subscriptions, it's technology. Costs continue to rise in that arena. We are a countywide agency that connects with all the other agencies in Washington County, and that has CAD software, that has our Mark 43, which is our RMS, our WebLEDs, our Power DMS. There's and as we add users and as these people continue to increase in their service costs, that's where you're seeing that little jump there.
probably, and if you scroll down through, I think everything stays relatively close. The cell phones are something that we have taken on, so that's 6325. That's just I'm sorry.
I can add a little bit into the cell phones, because right now you folks are going through that conversion this current fiscal year. Anytime you go through a conversion, whether it's software or anything, you're going to start running dual costs until you fully get converted. And so that's why you kind of saw that spike in the cell phones there in the police budget.
Thank you, David, on that. And then if you jump down, you're going to jump all the way down to 6701. That's probably where you're going to see the biggest increase. And there's probably a little harder to, or you couldn't explain in this, but I'll tell you why there's those costs there. One of the things that we've been working on, and one of the things that Washington County Sheriff's Office has had in place for a number of years, is the mental health response team. And that is a certified clinician and a deputy who respond to mental health crisis calls within Washington County. We are able to utilize them when that arises in a call for service. We actually have an officer who is currently certified to take one of the clinicians out and respond as necessary when a deputy's on vacation or unable to work their shift. That brings me to why we added $20,000 to this specific line item specific to the MHRT team. The one thing that we were finding is South Cities is seeing an increase in service for those, but as a standalone agency, we just can't afford a police officer and or a clinician on our own. So we've teamed with Tualatin PD and Tigard PD and King City, and collectively we want to put together a team where we can afford a clinician, a single clinician that can respond to these calls. So our chunk of that is 20,000. Tigard and Tualatin are going to add substantially more, I believe 50 and 70,000 respectively. But that is why that's there. We see the need, we see the importance of it. It's an invaluable tool that we need to take more advantage of. And I think if we have our own team out there between the agencies, we'll see a great benefit from that. There's another $10,000 that is associated with that line item, and that's our forensics unit out of the DA's office. What we're seeing right now is obviously our cell phones and everything is so technologically advanced that these things need to have experts be able to get into them and mine the needed data. Excuse me. So that's done and can be done out of the DA's office. But again, it's a cost that the DA's office can't take on alone. So they've asked all the agencies within Washington County to help contribute to that person and that equipment. And so that's where that $10,000 is coming from. We believe that we need those. I mean, we have a lot of investigations that require that. And so it's just kind of our fair share of being a part of the team. And then on top of that, I think, as David had stated out, he touched on the cell phones, and otherwise everything is really, I think, along those lines of where we're at. Obviously, some of the costs of hiring have been challenging. Just for you that aren't aware of our hiring processes, because we conduct psychological evaluations and medical evaluations, that those can tend to be quite spendy, and unfortunately we have to sometimes go through those, and candidates still don't work out. So we need to set money aside for that, because we are currently hiring and trying to fill those positions as needed. Hopefully I've covered, I think, probably some of the bigger ticket items that have caused a slighter increase. We were lower, and I believe in our overall budget last year, especially in the materials and services, I think by 30,000-40,000. Obviously, a lot of that's COVID related because we weren't able to do some of the things we were generally doing. So are there any questions I can help answer?
Hey, Ty?
Yeah.
Let me just add real quick. He just mentioned the fact that last year, this current fiscal year, we're projected to finish lower than budget in materials and services, which is showing a significant percentage point increase. So, and then we're also, I think, somewhere around 200,000 overall budget lower. So there's that. The other thing I just want to emphasize is that our contribution for that 20,000 that we're contributing to the South County Mental Health Response Team, it's going to be a significant impact for Sherwood, for our community, based on what we see now, because that unit, for lack of a better term, or that team is going to be committed to the areas of Tigard, Tualatin, Sherwood, King City, right? So we're going to have a much stronger presence in Sherwood and a much greater availability to the Sherwood community than we have right now. And so I think that's a pretty good investment. So anyway, just wanted to highlight those couple things really quick. Looks
Thanks,
like
Chief.
a couple questions. Mayor, I think your hand was up first.
Awesome. Thanks, Ty and Chief. Good presentation. Certainly on the numbers, it does look stark with the increases and caught me a bit off guard. Looking at the detail and hearing the detail is great. It's the importance of the additional training for all of our officers of those different categories that you highlighted is fantastic. Joining in the South County partnership with the mental health clinician is great. In starting in the current year's budget, we're now 2 years into like $25,000 in computer and communications equipment. Is that going to flatten out, or is that going to be kind of a standard each year? And then similar, you touched upon the cell phone expense, a big jump. Is that also going to be kind of constant at that level, or is it going to reduce going forward, flatten out more or less in some fashion going forward?
So Mayor, I can answer the software component or the technology. What part of that is we just got some new laptops those are basically the officers' computers. What we were looking at is trying to forecast, okay, how many more people are we going to bring on? That's probably a couple more. What we were running into is that we needed to make sure that we had a few extra, because inherently something goes wrong and then an officer's down and without a computer. So that built in a few spares for us, not many. I'd like to say absolutely that will be reduced as long as we can maintain these things. But the downside to this technology and these platforms, and Brad probably can speak to it even better than I can, is that there's a shelf life to them. So we unfortunately will have this ongoing battle at some point, and I think it will ebb and flow. And then on the cell phones, yeah, I'm going to let David speak to that, because I'm not sure, if there's going to be a lower rate there or where that's going to sit in the end.
Yeah, we're going to start, Bayer, that's a great question. Yeah, we're going to start seeing those flatten out. You can kind of see we spiked. We're projecting almost about 36,000. Then we're going to start going down as we get this fully implemented. And it's even probably going to go lower than that. We're projecting, or we're proposing about $25,000 this current fiscal year, but we anticipate it continuing to go down. So yes, just that one-time spike, because we're doing that conversion right now. So it's almost like getting hit twice the cost.
Yep. Awesome. Great. Thanks.
And let me chime in again. I want to I think it's important that I do this, and I want to make sure the full committee knows. Ty alluded to it, but it's dizzying to me. Like literally my head spins at where law enforcement and public safety technology has come. And when I started in this business and was pushing a patrol car around, technology was a new ballpoint pen, and I'm really not being facetious on that. That was it. And a few years into it, then we got our first computers, and they look like a little Atari screen. And we are now fast forward in 2021, where everything is digitally computer driven, digital signal. I mean, it just everything. And it's really can be a challenging prospect to keep up with it. And so while that on the one hand is really good because it creates, increases effectiveness and creates some efficiencies with regard to how the calls are processed and dispatched and all that stuff, it also becomes expensive because technology has to be purchased and it has to be maintained. And so, it's like when you go buy a weed eater at the hardware store and they say, well, do you want to spend an extra $10 for a guarantee, some kind of a warranty? In our world, those are called annual maintenance agreements. And that's just kind of how the technology world is. You don't have the option to say, no, we'll take our chances. You have to buy that for software in particular. You have to buy that annual maintenance. So it's really a challenge, and I'll leave it at that. But I just wanted to add to that because I really want, especially maybe some of the newer members of our budget committee, to really understand how impactful technology is in this business. We are so thankful for technology, but it does have an impact. The other part of it is we're in a constant learning curve, right? So that's a challenge for our staff as well. And I think Councilor Griffin was the next one to pop his hand up.
Thank you, Chief. And sorry, I was just eating Panda, sorry. I have a couple questions. So one, I think Captain Hanley, you mentioned $10,000 in there somewhere as part of one of the funds in regards to the Washington County DA's office setting up some kind of their own crime lab for cell phones. Can you elaborate on that?
It's actually a forensic unit is how it's described. It's so that when seized technology, cell phones, computers, whatever the device may be that needs to be examined. And gosh, off the top of my head, maybe the chief can chime in. We had one down in Portland that we utilized for a number of years, and that faded out. And so we've kind of been floating around trying to find people to perform these kind of things. And the DA's office has stepped up to try and help resolve that with this unit. And it would obviously be housed there, and they would bring the people in there. And Washington County as a whole and law enforcement would utilize, and I don't know all the details. I don't know if that's one or two experts that would be working that, but that would include those bodies and that equipment. And maybe the chief can speak to it. He may have some more info that he got out of other meetings.
Yeah, actually, so Washington County law enforcement agencies, all of us identified a need for a computer forensic laboratory interagency team. Prior to that, you would have to rely on the FBI, or you'd have to rely on up in Portland. You'd have to rely on, if you knew somebody else was doing it. Newburgh does it, but they charge us for it. And depending on the case, it can be fairly expensive. So Washington County decided to develop an interagency team. The DA's office really only kind of oversees that just from an investigative perspective, just because they handle the prosecutions. But it's an interagency team, and the county, not the DA's office, but Washington County, fronted the initial investment to get it going. And I think a couple agencies, I can't off the top of my head, I don't remember, gave them some trained investigators to be a part of the team. There's a need to add. And so what this comes up with is that the county has basically said, we can't put any more money into this. If you need to add a position, everybody needs to pitch in. And so that's what that 10,000 is obviously Sherwood doesn't have a position. Hey, we'll give you a body for the team or anybody else, because that would have solved it. Rather, everybody's pitching in to cover the cost, and that position will be paid for by Washington County, but everybody's pitching in to do it. So hopefully that explains it with a little bit more detail.
Thanks, Chief. Hey, so I'm wondering, I'm looking at that page 66B. Where is the $10,000 listed on this?
I think it's under the special projects. I don't know what that line item number is.
6701.
There
So-
you go.
Of the $20,000, you're saying half of it goes to MHRT and the other half is going to Washington County for this. Is that correct?
No, it's not correct. So,
It should be 20 and 10.
Well,
Yeah.
there's a 20.
so if the special projects, we got confused looking at a different sheet, I think, and thought there was 30 in that line. If the special projects only shows 20, that's the MHRT.
Okay.
The forensic, the other 10,000 is probably in professional services would be my guess.
6198, it jumps by about 30,000 compared to current year. So that's probably where it is. We can confirm that, Councilor Griffin.
Okay. And the other question I had was, do we have some sort of new IGA we're going to sign that has the details of exactly how Washington County is going to conduct this forensic lab and what the agreement is with us and accessibility and return? And I mean, is all that spelled out? Has it been written down somewhere yet?
My guess, Counselor, is that that document exists, but since this is the first year that we're making a contribution, we've not been a signer. And so I will have to, confirm that. And of course, the request was made to the agencies, but there was, we as agencies don't have the authority to say, yeah, here, let me write you a check. I mean, it's
Right,
part of the process. So I think once those things get approved and once all the dust settles from the various budget cycles, that's when you can expect to see an agreement. If there's going to be one, and if there's not, then we'll get that sorted through.
Great. And I have one final question. I'm sorry. I know that the video footage and audio footage from the body cam cameras is uploaded somewhere. On what line item is our agreement and how much does it cost for that? I know we pay that company to take care of that for us. Is that on this detail somewhere?
It's 6216 is our software subscriptions.
Got it. That's where it is.
Yeah.
So
And
that would include all of our digital storage technology that we pay for.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. Thank you so much.
Councilor Griffin, just to add on to your IGA question, so it may come up, MHRT, it would be the same thing. I know there's an IGA that is currently being worked on between the South Cities, Tualatin, Tiger King City, and ourselves, if we're able to move forward on that.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea. I think it's, well, and the chief knows because I experienced this firsthand last evening when a young woman who moved to the area recently appeared on my doorstep last night at sunset, very cold, with a dead cell phone, and did not know how to get home. And so I thought this is a perfect example of why, and so several officers, I called non-emergency, officers showed up, and Officer Perry was there first, and then Officer Mitchell Kydell came in and she talked to her, and it was such a great team effort. I sent a glowing email to the chief earlier today. I just am so impressed. But I think the whole MHRT program is awesome. And if we are going to be a part of that, I'm all for it, because last night I saw an immediate need, because this young lady was extremely nice, but there was a slight disconnect with reality. So, but that kind of person, a clinician, could have maybe been of assistance. So I certainly appreciate all they did. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Counselor. Mr. Sherwood.
Yeah, I'll be quick because I know you have to go to the next meeting. The only question, I was looking through my binder from last year, and it was touched on that the cameras at the 99W where the high school was down, and how that was going to be a revenue hit, and how the fines and interest were down quite dramatically. It looks like 98%. And that was going to affect kind of the budget for, I guess, 2022 last year. How's that going to affect? It seems like it doesn't go back up at all moving next year. So just kind of touch briefly on that. Look at page 66 under fines, interest, and other.
Yeah, so I think that might be a question best answered by David.
Yeah, and those fines are not in the police budget.
Yeah, you'll see those in the court budget when we get to,
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah, the court budget's going to be, we'll get to that here in a few minutes.
Okay.
But it's important to understand that I think what you might be seeing is reflective of not anticipated, expected and planned construction at the other intersection. So we obviously have to, just like we tried to do in last year's budget, and we have to plan for that with respect to, the revenue. I mean, the program certainly isn't about revenue, but the reality is there's a revenue component to traffic enforcement. And so we have to plan for that. And construction is going to be hitting 99 in Tolt and Sherwood. And that's where we have the other intersection where we have photo enforcement.
So we will definitely touch on that when we get to the court, because that's where all the fines for traffic citations are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for those questions. Never apologize for questions. So sounds like we got them all. Captain Hanlon is going to stick with you. I am going to bow out and jump on the Police Advisory Board meeting. So thank you all.
Thanks, Chief.
Thanks, Chief.
So with that, I'm going to jump back now to the beginning of where we were going to start. And so we'll just start in administration, and we'll start with City Council. Joe, I don't know if you want to go through that or.
Yeah, I'll cover council. It's pretty straightforward. So if you want to look at the detail sheet, it's page 53A, provides all the different line items. The increase in materials and services is largely to the cost to recruit a new city manager. So there are costs to hire the recruiting firm that the council has selected. Some of those costs are this fiscal year, and some of them are going to be billed after July 1st. So that's the biggest increase. That's actually in line 6198, which is professional and technical services.
Why? Are you going somewhere?
Yes, I'm leaving tomorrow.
I'm still denying it.
Joe, do you feel guilty about adding that expenditure into the budget?
Of course I do, sir.
Thank you.
Hey, Joe, I just had a quick question on page 53, just in your kind of summary table with the performance measures for regional meetings. I noticed that the WIF board isn't on that. I don't know if that's intentional or if that's just an oversight.
That was probably an oversight. I don't think we included every board and commission.
Okay.
And that was strictly an oversight, Counselor.
Cool.
The other thing to note is with coming out of the pandemic, training and travel, we are proposing to bump it back up to what pre-COVID was. I think, and I hope that council members can begin to experience travel and training again. I believe the LOC conference in the fall will be an in-person conference again. So assuming we can all start to travel, and if COVID stays on the track it is on, we started to restore those budget items for council members. Any other major questions on the council's budget? All right, David, not hearing any or seeing any hands, we can move on.
We'll move on to City Reporter.
So Sylvia, I believe, is on.
Good evening, Budget Committee members. I'm Sylvia Murphy, the city recorder, and I will briefly go through my whole 5 items on my budget here. So the first item, probably of great notice, is the cost of elections. Elections cost fluctuate year to year. A lot of times we don't know what's coming. Most people don't know, but in the general elections, which occur in November of even numbered years, those costs are covered by the state. So there is no cost to the city for a general election. Any other elections that occur, whether it be city initiated or initiative petitions that happen to come through, the city covers the entire cost of those items, from the production of the voters pamphlet to the ballots to the postage. We get a nice invoice from Washington County once those elections have concluded, and that's our responsibility to cover those. A lot of times we don't know what's coming when it comes to those types of elections. So you'll see fluctuation in that election line. The other area that is, let me see here, that a lot of people don't know, it's pretty standard under line item 6198, professional and technical services. That's pretty consistent over the years. You're gonna on occasion see a bump come up. This goes to cover the cost of our municipal code. So whenever we have amendments to our code, that's where basically this, that's what this line item is for. The travel and training has remained pretty steady, and so have all the other smaller line items. So if there's any questions, I'm here to service.
Sylvia, can you touch on the slight increase in your FTE count?
Yes, so there was a request that I made this year, as in past years, for some additional support. Currently, you have myself full-time and a 0.5 FTE of a records technician. In your budget book, you'll see the title as a deputy recorder. That's incorrect. It should be a records technician. Our records technician right now is basically was brought on to support administratively this department council. Primary function of that records technician right now is records management and the transcription of council meetings, basically public noticing. The city implemented a records management system about 2 years ago, which is the system that is that the state has in place. An Oregon Records Management Solution, ORMS, is the acronym for that. And within that system, to date, we have been able to put in about 80,000 records into that system with the support of the records technician. And those are records primarily of the city council office. What you're going to have are records of legislation that date back to the late 1800s. All those records are now on the city's website. If people have an opportunity, you can go to government public records and look for web drawer. On that web drawer, you're going to see those records that are permanent record, and they are available to the public. So we have about 80,000 records that are out there. My request this year to increase the 0.5 FTE to a 0.75 FTE was just to continue on. The support right now that the records technician provides is within the council department. The support that we are unable to provide is training and support citywide. City has 100+ employees. Every employee that has an email has records that they have to manage. And when we don't have that support, that work isn't getting done. So I would love to have more than a 0.25 increase, but I will take what I can get.
And then also, I just want to touch on too, when you look at personnel services across the board, also just take into consideration July 1st, the new PERS rates come into effect. So all the tiers except for tier 1 and tier 2 have gone up. Tier 1 went down about 0.6 of a point, but you're going to see the increase in PERS. So you're going to see those costs across the board increase.
Any other questions for the city recorder department? All right. Get the city manager department. The big item that's different, this is essentially a fairly flat budget, is the professional technical services line. I'm on page 55A, again, 6198. That went down slightly. We have two contracts for lobbying and grant applications. So CFM is the same firm. CFM DC we've had for a number of years. They provide lobbying, but more importantly, are always looking for grant opportunities and assisting us to write grants and submit grants to various federal agencies. So that pays for that out of that line item. We have been very, very active and engaged with staff in DC to try, and that's going to be very important in the next 12 months with all the federal dollars and opportunities that are going to be out there in terms of funding. So broadband, for example, is one that besides the ARP money that we're going to talk about that could be used for broadband, there are anticipated additional buckets of money for broadband. And the CFM staff who are in DC are very, very helpful in terms of putting those applications together and working with staff.
Yeah, and Joe, just and those folks were in the mix advocating for the ARPA program as well. So it's
correct.
Multiple different ways that they help us both at state and federal. It's been good.
So the federal contract has been an ongoing contract and been a very good relationship with the city. We did add this year CFM, their state lobbying. These are folks working down in Salem on our behalf. Has also been a very good relationship. The cost for that will go down slightly because we pay a little bit more when the legislature is in session, and most of next fiscal year they will not be in session. So our rates are slightly reduced because they're not tracking bills and following bills like they're doing right now. And if you're following Salem at all, we're talking thousands of bills that they're helping us keep an eye on. And a lot of those bills we're trying to play defense on to try to make sure bad legislation that could affect our city does not get passed. So that's the slight reduction in that cost. We don't know what the new city manager's salary is going to be. So David, what did you pick? Kind of mid?
Well, I built in some flexibility for city council when determining basically the offer, but I budgeted about midpoint, just to give some flexibility for you folks, kind of depending on the candidates.
So any questions about the city manager budget? Not a lot of change from last year's, except for the ones that I highlighted. All right, Mr. Soper.
Thank you and good evening, Budget Committee. So this budget, you probably see a particular item on this slide that jumps out at you as a pretty substantial increase. And if you look at the budget detail, it's all due to the legal services line item. So just want to provide a little explanation to that because otherwise things are mostly pretty consistent over the last few years. So on this slide here, fiscal year 2019, that was the year that council hired an outside labor negotiator. We didn't have any actual negotiations that year. Fiscal year 2020, we had negotiations with one of our unions, partially in that fiscal year, partially into the next fiscal year. Fiscal year 2021, we were budgeting for finishing up the negotiations with the first union and doing negotiations with the second union. You can see on the budget detail sheet that the projection is that we're going to come in far, far under budget in this current fiscal year. That's because the negotiations with the first union wrapped up more quickly than we anticipated. And with the second union, those negotiations ended up not happening. We rolled that contract over for a year. And so if you look at the budget for this upcoming year, it includes negotiations with both unions in the same fiscal year. So essentially the amount that was not spent in fiscal year 2021 rolls over into fiscal year 2022, plus an additional amount for the other union. Other than that, like I said, everything is pretty consistent from year to year, but I'm happy to answer any questions anyone has.
I don't have a question about this budget, but I just wanted to point out on the headings, did we get that corrected in the system? The one that says fiscal year 21-22 projected should be fiscal year 2021?
Yeah.
That column?
Thank you for bringing that up. So the second to the right column where it says fiscal year 21-22 projected, that was just a miss on my part. It's actually should be current year fiscal year projected. So 2021, the current fiscal year we're in. These pages aren't part of the final document. They're just mainly for the budget committee, just to kind of see, get down into the numbers, what's behind the bigger picture. But yeah, we'll corrected. Yeah, a lot of ones and a lot of twos in these years.
I type them wrong all the time.
Okay, Brad Crawford, IT. Is he joining us? He was going to be maybe a little late.
Yep. Good evening, Budget Committee. Couple quick updates on information technology budget. One of the big changes this year is the addition of an IT manager position. That's primarily because I'm moving a large portion of my time over to Sherwood Broadband as we prepare for a fiber to the home project and expansion of Sherwood Broadband. So that's largely where our increased personnel costs are coming this year. We had a fair amount of material services increases this year. We've got a handful of one-time projects that are hitting this year that's causing that increase. The big one is the devices that make up the city's network. The internal network was purchased when City Hall was built in 2006. And that equipment is sorely out of date and end of life. It needs to be replaced. So we have $70,000 in the budget this year to cover that project, as well as some projects over at the police station, improving the AV system that they have over there in their community room, which is in dire need of an update. Also, we have printers and police cars that are out of date as well. We're trying to get all of the cars kind of on a standard platform. So there's some costs in there to upgrade all those printers to the same model. We're also looking at some new backup solutions for backing up city data and pulling some of that data back on site here at the city. We do a lot of our backups out into the cloud, and we'll continue to do that, but we see the need to have some on-site storage. By doing this, we'll save some of our overall storage costs by bringing some of those backups back in-house. Got some security camera replacements that are new capital expenses. And then we also we had some support costs increase this year with our storage system. We added a new kind of a email spam filtering solution this past year that was a new expense that's adding to that. It would be the 6216 line item. And that is probably the most of it. I think I'll coming back to the personnel. Our FTE count in IT is 4. That's the FTE count we had for many years in the, I guess, probably from 2014 to 2018 was what our staffing count was. So we're really not adding any more than we had in the past. We are shifting bodies over to Sherwood Broadband as that project works spins up, and we have more needs over there. But our total FTE count is really staying pretty flat, which is pretty consistent with what our neighbors have too. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. If you have any questions on the details.
Brad, what's the time frame on citywide connection?
As soon as possible. Hopefully we have a planned start time of January, but we're hoping to maybe start some of it sooner than that.
Thank you.
Brad, what's your current saturation level in the city?
Our take rates,
Your current saturation level, what percentage of the city do you cover as of today with Sherwood broadband?
I don't have that offhand, but I could estimate it's probably in that 10% range, probably.
Okay.
That was our pilot area has about 600 homes in it, 600 to 700. We have about 6,000 residential water meters, so 600 would be about 10% of our total population.
And again, just a reminder, these are all great questions. I think when we get to the broadband budget, we'll provide more information. This is the IT budget. So broadband, this doesn't cover any of the broadband costs. This is the normal IT costs for our organization.
Yep.
If there's no other questions, I will move on. Human resources.
I believe Christina's on the call.
I am. Thank you and good evening, Budget Committee. So I am HR. It's just me. I provide support for all city employees. And so you'll notice on that first line item, personnel services, that there's a bit of an increase. And so the reason for that is that I've requested adding a part-time position to help with administrative services and recruiting and things like that, which would free me up to work on policies and processes and trainings that are essential for the city. And so that's the reason for that largest increase. The next line item, the materials and services, there's a little bit of an increase there as well. That is due to our liability, property, auto insurance. Those have had some increases, which is outside of our control, but has caused a little bit of an increase there. Other than that, the rest of my items are pretty much the same each year. Something positive is under the revenue for my department, which is basically a safe workers' comp dividend that has gone up since the previous year. That's basically a percentage of our premium that is paid back. And so those are basically what's under mine, unless anybody has some questions.
Have we had any claims against the insurance policies that have caused these rates to go up so much?
So I'll let Josh answer because he does handle liability, the property and auto claims. As far as workers' comp claims go, I do handle those, and those are separate. But we have had very little claims in this last year.
Yeah, we've had very little claims activity. The increases we're part of an insurance pool, the city county insurance services pool. And so when those rates increase, it's due to increased claims across the state, not just for our one organization. And increased claims and also just increased cost of claims, particularly in employment law and law enforcement cases.
Thank you, Josh. Any other questions for the human resources part of admin? All right, finance, David.
Yes, so finance, in your budget book, that is located on 59A. You'll see that, salaries were just increased to normal, not adding any new FTE or anything like that. But you're going to see a significant jump in materials and services. A few things that I requested kind of as one-time expenditures. One, I would love to automate this budget book process. I know that's available through OpenGov, which we currently have a contract through. And they would be able to build this budget book in the system. So as we go through an update, we'd be able to accommodate departments a little bit better on last minute changes. And as changes are made, it flows through and changes all the tables, the graphs in this budget book. It would just streamline the process. I want to get this process automated. I know one of the biggest challenges is we were making changes up till the middle of last week, and it was a rush to get that out the door within a couple of days to you folks. So I think if we could try to automate this, that would be nice. I think it would help a lot. It would assist the city a lot, so we can constantly be looking at our projections. And the last item, and Brad can jump in too, we need to start researching a financial software system. Currently right now, I'm requesting about $200,000 because there's going to be the one-time expense. I don't foresee, if we were to go down this road of a new financial system, it's not going to be in place this coming fiscal year. There's a lot of setup that's involved, but so I'm requesting $200,000 to start researching, start looking at all the different products, and hopefully try to get something in place. Because Brad, correct me if I'm wrong, there's some changes happening with our current software system this coming fiscal year. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We've got to do a pretty significant software update, and these applications aren't ones you just click go and they update. They're really implementation projects, because finance, much like a lot of our larger enterprise systems, affect so many different things. So we could either pay to go through that implementation for the software upgrade, or use this time to really look for a new product, which is needed, in my opinion. The product we have has served a purpose at one point in time, but there's so much more capabilities in some of these true government finance packages, and what we have it works. But I think in many ways we could kind of improve by looking at what else is out there. A lot of our neighbors have been going through finance software upgrades, and some of the things I hear from them, I think we could take advantage of as well. So yeah.
And
So I see a couple hands. I don't know if the mayor was first.
Oh, I'm sure I was first. The mayor can go right after me. He doesn't mind a bit. Hey, David, so I just kind of felt like your explanation of the $200,000 was a little loosey-goosey. Like, we're going to go looking, we're going to maybe find, are we purchasing something, or why are we putting $200,000 to go look? Are we going to actually get software for $200,000, or what's
that was the estimate that, I've only so far have been able to talk to one company. I have a bunch of other meetings set up in January, and that was the implementation cost of all their hours basically to set up. Because I've worked for an agency that they relied on their employees to implement the system, which sometimes when that happens, you try to mirror the system off your old system. And so I'd rather have a consulting firm or the company come in and actually implement it how it should be implemented. So that was just kind of a ballpark figure, 200,000. I'm not saying it's going to be that much, but it could be more. I was going through this process at Clackamas County. That was totally different. We were looking at, spending between $6 million to $10 million for a whole ERP system. This is more of a subscription-based, cloud-based service, which that's kind of the bigger thing nowadays. And talking to Brad too, we're for moving to cloud. So it'd be more subscription-based. And currently right now, you have different versions of Navigator where we only have so many subscriptions, where the company I did talk to, it's unlimited, basically unlimited access. So all the employees can get in there and look versus, some folks have to be on the web version and some folks actually have the full access version. That's currently kind of what we're dealing with right now. So it was just kind of a ballpark. I just want to throw it out there to the committee is, I'm not saying I'm going to spend that money, but it's something we really need to start thinking about. And, it potentially could be the ARPA money. I'm not saying we're not saying we're going to use the ARPA money, because it could be used on various different things. But it's just something we really need to consider, because it's a little concerning to me when, you know, preparing the audit this year and you have a fund out of balance, and don't know how that happens when you only can enter in balanced journal entries. Luckily, it was only like $20, $30, but you have a fund out of balance. That it's just odd, and you have to pull multiple reports to try to get the correct trial balance. So it's,
Yeah, I'm sure the financial software is just crazy complicated. I totally get that. I guess I would hope that maybe as we approach such a huge decision at the city, that maybe a work session or something might be appropriate to kind of review some of that information.
Oh yeah, no, this is not going to be a decision that's going to be quick or swift. It's really going to be, because, you know, folks are going to come here, and I've been through the sales process before the county. They're going to tell you everything that's great and wonderful about their product. But really what I look at is, I also look for references. I want to find other jurisdictions that actually use this software. And if they're close, I want to take a field trip and go talk to some folks to see what their system can do, what their system can't do. And
right,
I understand that we're a smaller jurisdiction, so subscription based would probably make sense versus buying a massive ERP system for millions of dollars.
Right.
But no, it's not going to be something that's going to be a quick decision. There's going to be, I want to make sure all the stakeholders are involved, which is council, which is all the department directors. I want to make sure that everyone's involved in this decision-making process and can have a chance to maybe look at the system, to see a demo of what can the system do? Could we start getting rid of what I like to call all these other shadow systems that we have? Could we start making a kind of a cohesive system that all talks to each other versus, you know, you do have that chance right now currently where we take information, have to journal entry it into the system, and that just it could potentially open you up to human error. So,
right.
You know, it's
Thank you so much for that explanation.
Yep. And Mayor, I think you had some questions.
Yeah, so I agree. We do need to look into and invest in technology, and any finance tool. Well, the OpenGov to assist on a 1-year deal, you know, might be low cost, makes sense for your next budget cycle, but I would imagine any finance package that you'd get should have a budget component to it to make life easier as well.
Yep.
But a careful review, as you generally talked about, of multiple areas within the city organization that can be improve the technology, because it, you know, including wrapping in court, potentially, you know, utility billing, just it's an important thing that is past due project.
And I'd like to try to find, you know, even, you know, we have a separate system for forecasting. There's got to be packages out there, like you were saying, Mayor, that it's all inclusive, at least mostly all inclusive, to where we don't have to pay all these separate companies for all these services.
Here, here.
Nancy has her hand up.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Yes. So my question is, I don't think it's probably in this budget. Probably it was in the last budget, the IT budget, not human resources. But are we going to be, as a city, investing in a little bit more security for the finance department and the departments in, like, the police department, so that they can't be hacked?
I'll let Brad jump in. I know that they do quite a bit of training here, but I'll let him jump in and let you know what they're doing in the IT department.
Okay. So firewall updates, things like that. This is what I'm looking for.
We're always updating security, and that's something that's always top of mind. And you can spend a lot of money on security, so it's finding the fine balance of what, you know, how much you spend and how much, you know, and how much benefit you get from that. But yeah, we're doing a lot of security updates. We did some this year. I think we said the spam filtering is a big one. A lot of the ransomware comes via email, so if we can capture that in somebody's mailbox before it hits, that's a good thing. We've also one of my highlights this year is we're updating all of our firewalls as well. So one of the benefits of potentially going to a cloud-based system is we're transferring a little bit of that risk to a provider, and you're paying for that transference of risk, but potentially you get some benefit there by not having to worry about the security of servers sitting on your own networks and whatnot. So.
Yeah, I was going to just add to that. I think one of the advantages of moving to cloud-based services is that both the software systems and the servers that they run on, there's full-time dedicated staff that are constantly keeping the systems updated from any recent malware and attacks and those things. Something that your local IT staff could never keep on top of to the same level of degree and frequency that a cloud service can. I think Nancy, one of the things you said when you asked the question is, I can't remember exactly what you said, but there's no such thing as perfect security or foolproof. Anybody can be hacked with enough time and effort and dedication by the hacker. So there's never a foolproof solution, but obviously we want to be as good as we can possibly be at the right balance, to Brad's point.
Right, and understood. I'm in that business too, and but it does seem like more budgets are increasing to cover the fictitious security.
In the IT department, they're really good about training us employees on emails and phishing expeditions that they like to do, and so they keep us on our toes here. So they do a good job. Any other questions in regards to the finance budget? If none, I will move to municipal courts, and Thomas, we'll get to your question too. Let's take a look at the revenue. Originally, we adopted, for fiscal year 2021, we adopted a little over $2.5 million, thinking we were going to bring those in for fines and assessment. But we did not realize COVID was going to go on as long as it was. And then also we didn't realize that our southbound traffic lanes near where the new high school, that construction was going to go on and our cameras were going to be down. I think we were told they were going to be down, I think it was till the end of August, and they ended up being down, I think almost till the end of December. So there was significant amount of downtime, which of course, less folks on the road, less, I guess, active cameras, that's going to decrease your revenue. What I'm proposing this year is a $2.1 million. I'm taking that down. And the reason for that is we have that project with the 12th and Sherwood Road, Roy Rogers Road, the widening project. So we're going to have, correct me if I'm wrong, is it the red light cameras that are going to be down, or is it the speed cameras that are going to be down at that intersection?
The red light cameras will be down during construction. The speed cameras along Highway 99 will stay active.
Okay.
And be prepared, because it'll be a construction zone. Citations, fines double.
Yeah. So I budgeted very conservatively here. So I'm hoping I'm wrong and the money comes in higher than that. But I wanted to be conservative just because it's right now. I'm hoping we open July 1st, but with COVID and then there's the unknown factor of how are companies going to run their businesses going forward in the future? Are they going to do the kind of the work from home, the work in the office, kind of halftime on each end? So I'm trying to factor that into not understanding and not knowing how companies are going to run their businesses going forward, because we were all thrusted into working from home all of a sudden. And so it was kind of a sticker shock, but some companies out there I think are liking it. So we could see some reduced traffic activity, which by having those cameras down, you could see there's also a 12.35% reduction, and that's in the materials and services line, because whenever a portion of the camera is down, we do get a credit through the photo red light services company that we use. So I projected, okay, we're probably going to be down maybe for about 8 months. Might be the whole year, but I was trying to be conservative there too, saying, okay, well, we're going to be down 8 months. I could have probably put in a year, but I said 8 months. And So that's why in the line item on 60A, you would see it's account number 6112, where we budgeted $267,500 in this current fiscal year. We only expected to spend $211,000. That's because the southbound by the new high school, we had some cameras down. And this year I'm budgeting $230,000, expecting, you know, as Joe spoke about, portions of the camera being down for at least about 8 months is what I'm projecting. And with that, the other areas, you're just seeing small nominal increases where it's either personnel services, nothing too significant. I covered kind of the main portion is the revenue for this fund. So with that, I'm open up to any questions that someone might have, or Thomas, I want to make sure I answered your question for you.
You did. Thank you very much.
So Nancy, I don't know if your hand's still up from before, or is it a new hand?
No, it should be down. Hold on. Okay, it's lowered.
Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further questions, I'm going to move on to the next department, which is community development or community development.
Can I ask the committee, we've been going for an hour and a half now and we finished admin. Does anyone need a break for 5 minutes at all, or should we just keep powering through? All right, hearing nothing, I think that means let's power through. So,
all right, let's keep moving forward. I'm going to move it over to planning. Julia, you or one of your department heads can take over from here.
Yeah, I'm going to cover all my departments. Just a reminder that community development is planning, building, engineering, code compliance, and economic development. And I'll talk about the last two under community development management. Planning in general, we're actually projecting a slight decrease in revenue, but not majorly. We are projecting a general decrease in applications, and then we also have a grant, so that kind of offsets that. Personal services is a slight decrease, and that's really a function of how within our department we allocate time. And one of our planners, actually several of our planners, but one in particular, does quite a bit of work supporting economic development with mapping and just kind of providing information. And then our admin assistant also does quite a bit to support economic development, which is actually in the CDD management. So that's one of the reasons why that's showing under personal services, a reduction in materials and services. The big change or the big difference is grants. This current year, we have several projects going on. Most prominently is the comp plan update, which we pay consultants for. Next year, we still do have projects, but not quite as much consultant load. And so that's why the materials and services line is down. Any specific questions about anything in the planning budget that I can answer for you besides that overview?
Russell's hand.
Okay, yeah, I can't see hands, so thank you for pointing that out. Russell?
Hey, Julia. So I was looking at, hold on, I had to do my glasses. 6216 software subscriptions.
Yes.
What
Yeah,
is
thank
that?
you. I saw that. I believe that is business license software, and that went back to planning. It sort of bounces between planning and finance, but it's back in planning, and we upgraded the software program so that it actually can be done online and people can pay online again. And so I believe that's what that amount is and why it is a significant increase.
So okay, so is it like $5,000 a month, or is it that?
You know,
entire
I
value?
am honestly not positive. Brad, do you know how that software works?
You might want to check into that because I don't think that's business license software.
Oh,
No, it's Infor.
It might be your Infor costs. Yeah.
It is.
no,
Yeah.
Infor is showing up in community development management.
Oh, okay. I'll take a look at that.
Okay,
I can dig into that while you're talking.
yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's fine. Anytime. Thank you.
All right, I'm sorry, I assumed that's what that was, and yeah, we'll get back to you on that. Any other questions? So moving on to building. So that this one shows a significant increase in revenue. And when we put our budget together, we did not anticipate that the Willamette Water Supply Program treatment facility was going to be coming in next fiscal year. And then we found out they were, and that their building permit plan review is a percentage of the value of the project. And they have indicated that they are estimating their plan review fees to be about $900,000. So obviously significant revenue change. And so we increased the projected revenues by that much, or about that much. And so other than that, our revenue in building would have been fairly similar to what it's been in past years. I want to point out, though, that in the expenditures we do, so again, the plan review fee is a percentage of the projects. And then we do not currently have a commercial plan reviewer. So we have a contract plan review. Currently it goes to a company that we have do our plan reviews, and per the contract, they charge us 65% of the plan review fee. So if you do the math on a $900,000 plan review, they would be getting almost $600,000 in plan review fees. We've been wanting to bring that in-house for a while now, but never were certain that we would have the long-term consistency to be able to bring somebody on. There's a lot of benefits to bringing somebody on in-house. It gives us a little bit more control over the customer service, control over the priorities. Someone is actually physically in the office and can answer questions. But again, it's a pretty specialized position, and we weren't certain that we could sustain that in the long term. But when we found out that we were getting that level of plan review fee, and that we would potentially be paying out that amount of plan review, we pretty quickly decided that we wanted to propose to add the position of the commercial plans examiner into the budget. So that's why the personnel services is a significant increase. And then the materials and services is increased as well. But I just want to point out that it would be increased by significantly more because, again, when we put this budget together, we didn't know about that plan review fee. If we did, then we would have had to budget about $600,000 for other professional and technical services or building plan review for that. So that is.
So Julia, there's a number of questions I see, and I'll get to them. I want to reiterate, because we've talked about this internally for a number of years. The other thing that is on the horizon beyond just this year is, as you noticed, driving down 12th and Sherwood Road at the Trammell Crow site and the Phelan development site, we anticipate significant building over the next few years of industrial development. And a lot of those projects have tough timeframes or expectations of developers that we're trying to meet. And by bringing this in-house, we control project priority versus sending it to a firm who has multiple clients and we may not have that control. So there's a customer service aspect to it as well that we think will be an advantage by having this in-house. So Mayor Mays, I think you were first on your hand, and then Councilor Young is also asking a question.
Mayor just should always be last.
Go right ahead, Kim.
No, I'm just joking. You go ahead.
So obviously, in general, the planning department should always pay its way, if not throw off some cash for a reserve. Sometimes these budget books just drive me nuts. So we're about to wrap up one of these years, this never-ending comprehensive plan update. And so then that expense that goes above and beyond will go away. So are there other resources that we're not noting on page 61 in your sphere of the world? Because with as much plan review money that we'll be getting, I was still surprised that we're upside down still because of these other projects that are non-development oriented.
So I'm not tracking your question.
So page 61, total revenues 2.37 million, total expenses 2.55 million. Normally, fees for services covers the expenses for delivering those services, and then we do additional stuff.
Yeah, I guess that is, I guess, first of all, ultimately a choice, but that's the entire community development budget, which includes economic development, includes code compliance, includes positions that are not
revenue
supported.
I forgot code compliance is in that bucket.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So Julia, my question was just obviously it's the perfect time to hire this internal plans examiner. So that's a smart move. But with that being said, if we are going to get somebody internal, why then would our building plan review and other professional technical services be so high, the 75,000 and the 40,000?
So that might go down again. That was what we had budgeted originally, and we just didn't change that. We still might need to, on occasion, send it out if our commercial plans examiner is working on something really major and big, and then we get other things we don't necessarily want to make people wait for them to get done. And so it just gives us the ability to send it out if we need to. And if you look at what we've done in past years, it's not out of the ordinary. So that's why we kept it there.
Thank you.
Yeah. Nancy, did you have a question?
Yes. So here's my question is, so this new person, do we feel like what you're putting in the budget would cover what they might be asking? I mean, do you feel like this is enough to go out and get a quality person for your staff?
Okay. Yes, 100% for several years. So keep in mind, again, we would be giving about $600,000 away if we did not hire this person. And there is no job at the city that makes $600,000 a year, even fully loaded. So that's kind of a, keep that in mind. I can't remember the pay range that we exactly landed on, but we did look at comparable positions in other cities that are currently hiring to make sure that we were budgeting a reasonable amount.
Okay. And would you also work into this amount, maybe the cost to bring them into the town and the cost to bring them into Oregon in case they're not here already? I'm not thinking we have a big
part
school
of what
here.
we budgeted. That might be something that we need to talk with, HR and administration about if that was what we came up with. I'm pretty sure we need to have somebody that is licensed in Oregon. So I don't know that we would necessarily have somebody from outside unless they already have that.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more than likely going to be coming from Oregon because of Oregon certifications and license.
Right. Okay, just wanted to make
know,
sure.
well, go ahead. And I know we're probably covered, but one thing you got to be careful about with the new pay equity laws here in the state of Oregon is about certain benefits to bring people in, because if you maybe have someone else in that position, now you've just changed the whole salary scope. So yeah, it would have to be a discussion if we were to ever do this with other positions, but sometimes the city has the one-of-kind positions, like say maybe a city manager or something. But when you start getting positions a little lower level where there's maybe other managers or other senior folks, you know, it's something that we have to have a discussion on. So as Julia said.
Any other questions about the building budget? So moving on to engineering. This one is relatively flat as well. Revenue, we anticipate a slight increase in revenue. The bulk of the revenue for engineering is also based on a percentage of the public improvement costs, and that's often really hard to gauge, but we do have quite a few subdivisions in the Brookman area that are coming in, as well as some developments in the Tonkin employment area. So we're thinking that we will be slightly better than we projected to be this year, or that we had when we went through the budgeting process, we thought we were going to be this year. If you look at the line item, we actually are quite a bit above where we thought we would be when we put the budget together last year. Under expenditures, personnel services is up slightly, and that again is a function of how time is allocated. What that means is that I've got more of my engineers focusing on private development and private development projects than they did this year or projected to this year, and less on capital projects. So that's what that is meaning. Materials and services, I'm going to have David explain, because the major change in this category is the engineering overhead and the reimbursement from capital projects. So David, can you explain what that means and why it's considered a positive change?
Yeah, so basically, some of engineering's time is allocated out to, let's say, the water fund, the sanitary fund, maybe broadband. I don't think they need the broadband this year, but the other three enterprise funds, and it's just for their time that they're allocating, or that they'll feel that they're going to be working on certain projects here for the city. And so when you look at line item on 65B, it is it's right at the very bottom, is account number 6802. That's basically the time that's being estimated that these individuals are going to work outside the general fund for either, let's say, the water fund or the storm fund or the sanitary fund or maybe even the capital construction fund. It's just their time being allocated out, because they're not focused on let's say, outside development. They're focused on kind of the capital improvement plan. And these are all estimates, you know. I mean, Julia gives me kind of FTE allocation of maybe 10% is going to be charged here, 5% there. So it's not a perfect science, but that's why the numbers look weird, is because we're getting reimbursed from these other funds of the city, whether it's those three funds that I've mentioned. It's just they're reimbursing the engineering for the cost of labor.
And other than that, the materials and services budget for engineering is pretty much flat compared to what we budgeted last year. Any questions on that? Again, I can't see hands, so if someone can call on somebody.
Councilor Young, is your hand up?
Well, it appears to be because I didn't put it down.
Okay, no problem. I don't see any other hands, so.
Okay, so moving on to CDD management. So when this division was created, it was really me. And over the years, it has been expanded to include me, as well as Bruce Coleman, our economic development manager. And then a portion of code compliance, if their time doesn't fall neatly within any other department, which happens sometimes. And then we have staff that support economic development. So their time spent supporting economic development is charged to CDD management as well. So that's why the personnel services may seem high when you think there's really 2 people. There's more than 2 people. And that's also why there's a slight increase, because we've just changes the way we've kind of projected where people's time is going to be spent, especially with the formation of the new urban renewal, just kind of how that was all going to work. Materials and services, so I skipped over the revenue. Normally CDD management doesn't have revenue. This past year, we had a significant amount of revenue because we were the gatekeeper of the grants that we gave out, as well as money that we received for those grants. And so that's why you see a significant reduction compared to FY 2021. We do still have a small grant that just hasn't gotten completed yet. It's the Business Oregon Visioning Grant for the tannery site. So that's where that $20,000 is from. And then in the expenditure, the materials and services, the reason for the significant reduction is related to those grants as well. We're obviously not giving those out, so we're not budgeting that. I think that is, oh, and then Infor on line 2216, that's software subscriptions, that went up, but that basically covers our building permits and our timesheet systems and our portion of Infor.
So a couple hands popped up, Councilor Griffin and then Councilor Young.
Thank you. So I guess on 6216, you just mentioned our portion of Infor and a couple of other things. Did everything get lumped into that account this year? It's just like $20,000 more than it has been. So,
you know, I'm honestly not sure. I think we need to look into that as well. I don't know that I put that budget number in there, so okay. I'm not sure if that includes the building department's portion of Infor. Just look.
Yeah, and that's fine. This could always come back on a different night, but.
Hey, Julia, this is Craig.
Yeah.
So that expense is for Infor going to the cloud. So that is the building department and everybody in the division that uses that. So you have our some maintenance costs with the actual.
Okay, thank you, Craig.
Cloud project.
Okay, so I guess my question is, why is it $20,000 different than before? It's not an ongoing thing, or is there something different coming up next year?
No, there isn't. It's ongoing. So we went to the cloud, so we have no IT staff working on all the stuff from Infor. And it's divided out amongst every section of who uses the system.
Okay, I get all that. I'm still trying to figure out why it's $20,000 more than it has been. What's different?
So what's different is we're on the cloud now, and we used to pay just a maintenance cost every year.
Oh, so it actually moved to the cloud. So is that a one-time thing, or are we going to be paying this amount on an ongoing basis?
Ongoing basis.
Holy moly. I wish I owned the cloud. For Julia, another question. What is 6602 community support and promotion? We had projected or adopted $250,000. We project it's going to be 456 and now nothing. What is that?
That's the grants. That's the
thank you. Got it. Thank you.
Grants.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you. Councilor Young, you're next.
Well, yeah, that was part of my question. I figured that was the grants, and I'm just curious. So we had 653,000 come in and only 456 go out. Where's the other 200,000 going?
That would be, if you recall, last April we spent the $200,000, but
before we knew we would get reimbursed for it.
Yeah, and because that IGA was signed in July, I couldn't back that revenue into prior fiscal year because we didn't really have ownership of that money until we signed the IGA. I think it was the first council meeting in July. So it crosses fiscal year, which makes
We
reconcile.
spent it in 1 year and got reimbursed in the next year. Okay, that makes sense.
Exactly. And these numbers are going to be cleaned up because we did the supplemental budget early this year, in like the beginning of December. So a lot of these numbers in terms of budgetary numbers, I'm going to be bringing to council when we go to adopt this budget. I'm going to be conducting a supplemental budget, just start aligning, making sure we budget for all the federal revenue and all the dollars that went out to the businesses and so forth. So this stuff's going to get cleaned up too.
Awesome. Thanks.
Nancy, it looks like your hand is up again.
Yeah, I have just a quick question about the grant money. Do we have any way of measuring, or do you have a feel for the return on investment for that? And maybe this question is best for Joe, as city manager.
Yeah, I'll take a stab, and then Joe, I don't know that we have any specific way of determining return on investment. It's really because they went to businesses to help them survive COVID. So I guess the return on investment is how many businesses have remained. And I think most of our businesses are still here. And I mean, sure, there are some that are struggling still, but I think that, yeah, I mean, I think the return on investment is just whether or not businesses ended up having to close. Joe, do you have anything to add to that?
I would kind of just piggyback on that. We haven't done an analysis to go back to see and compare every business that got a grant, last year. Are they still in business? My sense is most of them are. I know that they certainly appreciated the help that they got from the city. And as many of you know, maybe you don't know, we were one of the first cities to actually provide grants to our businesses. We dipped into our own reserves, not knowing that we were going to get reimbursed by the CARES Act. And then we did at least 3 rounds, if I recall correctly. So we can do that analysis. That'd be an interesting question to ask and to look into. We just haven't done that at this point.
Okay, I just feel like it's still a good story for the city.
Yep.
To step forward, be the first ones to do it, but it would also be a follow-up to the story. Did it work? I mean, it wasn't a lot of money. We all know that, but did it work?
That's a wonderful suggestion, Nancy. I appreciate that. And I think that is something, especially as we're coming out of COVID, that we can figure out how to tell that story. I appreciate that.
Councilor Young, I see your hand again.
The thing should be able to notice we've already talked and automatically lower our hand.
Well, now I see Councilor Rosner's joined us with his question.
I just wanted to let everybody know I am here now. And I apologize for being late, but I had a meeting I could not move.
Well, welcome.
I'm sure it's been a riveting meeting.
Always.
Yeah, Council President Roser, I just wanted to let you know, before you got here, we defunded the council president position. I hope that's not going to be a problem.
How do you go from 0 to lower than 0?
You have to pay the city now.
I have to pay now?
Yeah, I think you owe us. David's ready to run your visa right now.
Okay, I'll text you the numbers.
Any other questions in community development before we move on to community? I think we're going to community services next.
And before we do, I feel like I would be remiss not to remind everybody, since we're talking about these grants and how much money we got out and how much we help businesses, the extraordinary job that Bruce Coleman did in doing that. He was really the point person and took a lot of energy to do that. And so I just want to publicly acknowledge that and thank him for the work that he did to help those businesses throughout this past year.
You're here.
Phenomenal job.
All right, I don't see any other hands, so we're going to switch over to Community Services and Kristen Schweitzer, who is our interim assistant city manager, and in a few days will be your interim city manager. So welcome, Kristen. We haven't heard from you yet.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I am fortunate enough to have all of my managers here tonight, so you're going to get to hear from all of them. Adrienne is here to talk about the library, so I'm just going to go ahead and turn it on over to her.
Wonderful. Thank you, Kristen, and good evening, Budget Committee, Mayor, and Councilors. So I'm going to speak about the budget, of course, for Sherwood Public Library. And as I think all of you know, Sherwood Public Library is a member library of Washington County Cooperative Library Services. The bulk of our revenue comes directly through WCCLS. And I'm going to look at my notes, which are over here, back and forth to you. And actually, Nancy, you asked a question about return on investment, and I could speak to that for the library. Our return on investment using figures from the 18-19 fiscal year was almost eightfold for the return on investment. So WCCLS funding comes approximately 2/3 of the money coming from there is from the county's general fund. And then about 1/3 of that funding is coming from the 5-year operational levy. And I'm on, by the way, I'm on page 69 for the library budget or the library overview, and then 69A for the line items of the budget. So we are in year 1 of the current levy cycle, again, a 5-year levy cycle. The distribution of funds to member libraries is approved by the WCCLS Executive Board, which Joe is a member of, and that's moving to Kristen. And let's see, the main difference you're seeing there with the if I go down on the slide, if I go down to the change with personnel services, 11.72%. We have a combination of regular step increases and PERS. And then, of course, we've asked for 2 small increases to FTE, which you probably saw. There's a 0.3 FTE request for an existing library assistant 1 position, and a 0.2 FTE request for an existing technical services librarian position. Do note, please, that the references in the budget book to that latter position say library tech, which is an error. It should say technical services librarian. We don't have a classification for a tech. The last time the library asked for an FTE increase, or excuse me, the last time we received an FTE increase was in fiscal year 18-19, and it was a 6-hour increase, or 0.15 FTE. We had 3 part-time positions that were each under, just barely under 20 hours apiece, and those were brought up to exactly 20 hours. This is the 3rd year we've requested the proposed changes. I know David's working on the exact amount to parse out the difference with this line with the personnel of these 2 position requests. And so we might get that to you later. And then let's see here. I wanted to say also, let me speak to the 2 positions. So the technical services librarian, that person is currently 32 hours a week, or 0.8 FTE. This would of course bring that to 1 FTE. That librarian purchases all of our materials for the library, catalogs those, plans and implements new collections such as the popular Library of Things. The amount of items that we add to the collection has increased 47% in the last 4 years. And so now it's at nearly 9,000 items per year that we add to the collection. If this position request were to be approved, it would reduce the public's wait time by 20% and reduce the amount of materials needing to be stored in the workroom, which some of you may know is quite small because they'll move through that pipeline more quickly. And then the library assistant 1 position is 1 of 4 positions. So all 4 are at 20 hours a week. These are our public facing staff who are working express services inside the library, curbside services, material handling for returns that come through from the courier system for the county, and holds for patrons. And so if this position were to be approved, it would help us to reopen more quickly. It would help us to continue to offer curbside even after we move to mostly express service. Express is what we're calling the inside services right now because we're having short services, short visits, I should say. It would also help us to increase staff presence on the public floor. So back in pre-pandemic times, we had a lot of behavior issues that we had to monitor and enforce, and they were very time consuming. And we were open 60 hours a week then, and hope to get back to that soon. And then I'll speak to materials and services. So there's a small increase there, almost 3%. Some of that is general inflation in the book industry and programming supplies. There are also a few one-time funds that I wanted to point out that are within that materials and services. So there's, in the services side of things, there's $2,500 set aside for strategic planning. So this is, by the way, this is page 69A. I'm at line 6198. And so that total amount is 11,900. Of that, 2,500 is for strategic planning for a consultant. And then there's 4,200, which is a one-time fee for what's called a diversity audit. And that is a service to look at all the materials in our collection and evaluate, are we representing a diverse audience well? And then in the book budget, which is over on the next page, 6404, there's also $3,500 of one-time funds there. That's the other piece of that diversity audit. So the services piece identifies where our gaps are, and then we hopefully can fill, many of those gaps with some of that book budget. And then there's also additional one-time fees, one-time expenses. So that's the last item, 7051, office equipment. That is 2 self-checkout machines. So we have one new self-checkout machine that we purchased 2 years ago. And then that one is a new one. So now we have 3. We've had 2 for since the library opened. The 2 are end of life. They stop working. There's downtime. They take a lot of time to maintain. They're not, when there's downtime, we can't use them, of course, and it takes a while for the vendor to come out and fix those. And so it's just natural to be expected to replace those. The 2 self-checkouts pre-pandemic were representing about 40% of our total checkouts happened at self-checkout. And then these days, what we're seeing with checkout when people do come in is they need quite a bit more help. So I think it will take us a while to get back to that 40% because there's kind of deferred library account maintenance, the people coming in to talk about lost items and get new cards and that kind of thing. Let's see, let me just take a quick look at my note. I think those were the things I anticipated you would have the most questions about. But I have a lot more notes, as you can imagine, prepared. So let's see if anybody, I see Mr. Fairbanks, you have a question.
Thank you. I got a little bit of oxygen to speak. I've held my tongue this whole time.
Okay.
Two-part question. One is more for myself, and that's just the understanding. I missed or didn't understand the revenue, the consistency of the revenue source from the county. And then because I can't see 22, 23, 24, 25. And then just to help me understand, I mean, I see the numbers, but 5-6 years of this gap, this trending gap between revenue and expenditure. If you could just speak on that, please. And maybe help me understand a little bit why that happens and where does that close 22, 23, 24, 25? How do you see that come back where you don't have that deficit? Thank you.
Sure, good questions. So with WCCLS revenue, which is of course the majority of our revenue, the 5-year levy cycle typically has all 5 of those years identified for what our distribution is going to be. And we just last fiscal year closed out the last 5-year cycle. So we knew before going into that 5-year cycle, we knew what our 5 years of funding distribution we're going to be. This time it's a little bit different. The last levy was a renewal for one thing. It didn't go up. The next levy is expected to be a request for an increase in rate. So the current 5-year cycle that we're in is a flat cycle, but WCCL's built in, I think it's a 3% increase for each of those 5 years. So that's what they did last cycle, 5-year cycle. This 5-year cycle, this particular year was known in advance, and then the executive board and the county are looking at what's called a cooperative agreement process. And they said because of the pandemic and everything going on, let's look at that funding distribution again. So we don't have the exact numbers that we normally would have for next year and the year after, the remaining 4 years of the levy cycle. That said, WCCLS has promised to uphold the intention of the levy. And so that means that all libraries would still be able to meet the services laid out to the voters. And that means maintaining all the levels of services at every member library. So no library should be going down in the distribution. There are metrics I can speak to if you need this level of detail, but there are metrics that have been used in the past and that are being discussed right now, but they haven't been fully identified yet. And actually that's the work that's happening at the next couple meetings of this countywide process. Let's see, so in terms of that gap of the revenue and expenses, right now, I think we're playing a bit of catch up. We've been, Sherwood, of course, has been a small city for so long, and we're kind of getting into this medium size thing. And the same thing has happened in the library. And so the last 7 years or so, it's been making up for how do we meet the demands of this growing community, and we can't keep the same size staff and serve the same number of, serve a growing number of patrons and keep everything else the same. But I see it as getting to a point where we're maintaining. So the position requests, for example, we've been below our neighbors of the same size. So Forest Grove is the most comparable library in the cooperative to us, nearly the same size community, they have half an FTE more than we do, which is not exactly what we're asking for. We'd get finally to be the same as them. They still have a bigger budget. They still there's still some differences there. It's not exactly the same, of course, but I don't see that every year we would be asking for the same kind of increase at all. The intention is to live within our means. And the self-checkouts is something that those should last, I'd say 5 to 8 years at least. Maybe we could get 10 years out of them. Does that answer your question, or do you want more detail?
I'm fine for now. Thank you. Again, it falls back to, and we're all looking at this, some of us really for the first time, or, I've had 2 days to look at it. And so that it was really because it's been such a short time period. And this, just to be honest, the numbers were quite staggering, and they jumped out versus some of the others. And that's why I answered, but I'm going to look, I think I need to step back and look. I may have questions at some subsequent meetings down the road, but thank you.
Mm-hmm, sure.
We'd be happy to bring back more information, of course. We can take a look at some projections and take a look at that moving forward for the next 3, 4, 5 years, as you suggested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see a couple more questions. I didn't speak to overdue fines changing too, and I wonder, Mayor Mays, do you want me to speak to overdue fines before your question? Okay, so as many of you know, the Washington County Libraries stopped charging overdue fines this year. And that's a trend that had started several years ago, where overdue fines for children's material had been discontinued. And of course, that, countywide decision. So we saw a drop in revenue for our fines because of that. And then we knew that the day was coming. The trends for libraries was to drop library overdue fines. We still charge for lost and damaged fees, but to not punish the people who well, let me say, it becomes an equity issue. The people who are most likely to have fines and be prohibited from using the library because they can't pay them are hurt the most. And it became a smaller and smaller piece of our budget as more and more patrons start using ebooks anyway. So Sherwood saw the trend of weaning ourselves off of overdue fees before the county actually stopped charging overdue fees. We've been weaning ourselves off of that revenue for a while, and the city has incrementally added to what they do to support library operations. And then with the pandemic, library overdue fees were paused for any collection, and it went through the process of going through the groups I'm in, policy group, and the group that Joe's in, executive board, and to county council. It was all approved to discontinue charging overdue fees. So we kept lowering our forecast for fees because we were closed and not charging. It was a pause, and then they went away entirely. We zeroed that out, except for a very small amount that we expect because of lost and damage. So that was expected at some point in the next 5 years, but it came more quickly because of the pandemic and the equity issues that were coming in the county. Mr. Mays, Mayor Mays, what's your question?
I'm still nodding a little bit. I was surprised to see the FTE increase in the proposed budget. And so when I get surprises, I generally don't support surprises. So I'm going to noodle on it some more, and think about it. But a lot of the material personnel services increase does come from standard normal increases for existing staff. But if I was to vote today, and we're not, I would not support the FTE increase, but I'll definitely think about it some more.
Thank you for being open to thinking about it. Feel free to let me know what questions would help you make a different decision if that's at all an option.
And I'm writing down the committee's questions. Right now I'm having trouble getting in the system because I'm going to dig into these personnel services numbers for you folks more because of the 11.7 jump, just to verify everything and make sure we answer everyone's questions.
We definitely have a problem with the growing spread between revenue and expenditures, and we need to generate. Again, off the cuff, if we're going to increase FTEs, we need to generate revenue. And how can you generate revenue in WCCLS? Can you generate it by charging people to do programming? I don't know what the rules or limitations there are for you, or is there other means of generating more revenue? What are those options? Because if we're going to be a 2% increase or 3% increase on revenue, then it'll be hard to get more FTEs.
To answer your question, libraries' mission is to provide services for free.
That is not.
So none of the libraries in the county charge for programs.
So that is not. So that is not the point. The point is, how can you raise more revenue? So that's my question. I'll let you come back or answer offline. But because you need more revenue, or find more efficiencies. Can you automate more than you're automating now by one-time investments? I don't know. To continue to stretch and utilize folks better. Or we have the volunteer program that pretty much was offline for a year. Hopefully you'll be able to restart successfully soon to provide additional support. So.
Councilor Rosner, I see your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Joe. Yeah, so Keith just covered part of my question, but I guess just a comment. I think I need to understand this more. I missed part of the meeting. I apologize. But I'd also like to make sure we're really thinking very hard about what are temporary increases, especially when it comes to FTEs that are related to COVID. I don't necessarily agree with a concept that says we're going to be doing curbside forever. And I think that's a conversation we need to have, but I just want to make sure that we're breaking that out and really thinking about what's a temporary issue that we have to deal with related to the pandemic versus ongoing support. And I have the same concerns about this divergence between what we're getting from the levy and the system versus what our costs are. We have to figure out a way to reverse that trend. Part of that might be having some hard conversations with the county about how the levy system is working, because you can't have a 2 to 3% increase a year when we know off the bat that our personnel services and overhead, just that component in terms of PERS and benefit costs, et cetera, are increasing at almost double that rate on average. So I think it's a problem that we really need to take a close look at and figure out how we're going to solve for it. Because if it continues on this trajectory, in another 3 years, we could be looking at, I'm having trouble doing the math in my head here, but instead of a $500,000 delta, we could be looking at $1 million delta. And there's a point where we just can't do that anymore.
Thank you for sharing. And to speak to the curbside, the goal is not to keep curbside running as is in perpetuity. I think what we would advocate for is allowing curbside as an option long after we open the doors back to 60 hours so that people can still ask for that. But that's not the main basis for this request. So there were also things pre-pandemic and during the pandemic and what we expect post-pandemic.
Adrian, I apologize. And I came into this late, so I apologize. But did we offer curbside before the pandemic?
No, but we had people ask for it a lot.
Okay.
And other libraries do. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just one of those things we have to think of in terms of the costs as well. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying yes or no. I'm just saying the impacts of all that does raise our costs. So we just have to think it through. That's all.
Thank you.
Councilor Scott?
Thank you. Yeah, I feel like a broken record. I had some similar comments, so I won't go too in depth, but the 2% versus 13% and that 500,000 becoming quickly, $1 million was top of mind as well. I did have one comment about questioning is this. I know we had a work session a while back around the levy and how it's allocated in the county, potentially changing those formulas. I wanted to follow up and see, is this revenue based on current formula, projected new formula? We don't know what that is. And then again, if we start getting into more of a 3 or 5 year projection on this, making sure that any change to that formula is baked into that projection. And then my second comment was to kind of echo the comments on the curbside. I feel like we're getting to the point where we're going to be reopening and vaccination rates are high, and it feels like instead of doubling down on that, we should be pulling back from that. But that's just an off the cuff remark, hearing it for the first time. So.
Thank you for the question. So to speak to the current distribution and the metrics there, the metrics right now are the previous model. And so that was based on population size, the circulation, the number of items checked out per year, and also the number of visits. And the next model may look different. It likely will include those metrics, but it may include additional metrics as well. WCCLS has provided us the data. If they use the most current metrics and use this, updated metrics for the years going forward, what would that look like? Sherwood is almost right where we need to be. There would be about a 1.5% increase if the same metrics were used to what our distribution is, on top of the yearly increase. And then the things to consider, though, is the county is also, not just WCCLS, but the county is looking a lot at equity issues and where they're underserved and where are there gaps in the county. And so that's also a lens that is being used to look at the distribution. And I don't know yet how that will impact the distribution if it does. Another piece that may impact the distribution is ebooks. Ebooks are purchased centrally by WCSLS, and they're expensive. And they have to be their licenses, and they have to be renewed. And ebook usage went up significantly during the pandemic, so that has to be evaluated too. We don't know yet what user behavior is going to be like. Will people keep using ebooks at such a higher rate or not? But Sherwood, I said we inferred our patrons were early adopters, and we've seen that change a lot. They still check out more print books than ebooks. This year was the first year we saw some libraries their patrons check out more ebooks than print books. So that will impact the discussion, I think, too, for the next 5 years. And then I think I didn't write down your other question. I think I didn't quite speak to it about the curve.
It was just a comment about, it feels like we're going the wrong way on the curbside, like we should be pulling back from that and not expanding it or permanent, making it permanent. But that's just my off the cuff remark. Or, similar, I know in the senior center, we've done, we started doing meal deliveries, and that's been very popular, and we're going to continue to do that, but we charge a fee for that. So, we, in a similar model, if people want to have library services delivered or brought to their car, maybe there's a fee model there for that expanded service instead of, we aren't just necessarily obligated to do everything for free just because somebody likes it. Expensive.
Yes. So I feel like I may have gotten off on the wrong foot about mentioning curbside. And if I could, the curbside is a piece of this position request, but it's not the whole piece. It's not the majority of the piece. And we don't want to make curbside a major new service that we offer. It's something that we're doing now. I think we'll continue doing. It's tricky to staff curbside currently and express services in the library. But this position also would staff the inside of the library. We needed this position before the pandemic, and we anticipate needing it still. Also assisting with some of the library events and outreach and programs, other clerical tasks. The position would also, I mentioned, be a presence on the floor with the behavior issues, which is, I don't mean to say that we're the same as the police department, but imagine how a student resource officer being on the floor and being a presence is being proactive to help with behavior issues before they happen. And we spent a great deal of our time pre-pandemic monitoring and enforcing behavior issues, specifically with rowdy teenagers and people who maybe were being bullied and things like that, and sometimes calling the police department to help us out. So having more eyes on what's happening would be helpful. And then there'd be also marketing library services and allowing librarian and library management staff more time to meet city deadlines and strategic goals.
Adrian,
Yeah.
we stop for a second?
Yeah, I'm at the end of that.
I want to make sure that we're sticking to the questions.
Mhm.
I don't think I want to go too deep into what these positions are going to do, and we have several other hands that are up. So I think we and other departments to get to. So I want to make sure that we're not getting too deep into it, and we're happy to bring information back to people next week if they think of something else or would like more detailed information. But we do have a few more people that have questions.
Yeah, Kristen, before I go back to Councilor Rosner, because I think I didn't realize he still had some comments on this. So I'm going to start with him, and then Councilor Young and Councilor Browse. And I thought Councilor Garland had their hands up. So one of the things that I'm hearing, certainly from this discussion, is this growing gap in whether we can afford, no matter what the position is, can we afford this? And should we be making a decision when we don't have a better sense of the next few years? That's what I'm hearing from members of the committee. And we have some time to bring back some more information and chew on this, so to speak. So that's what I've heard. It's not necessarily the amount, and I think figuring out what the amount of these two is should be something David comes back with specifically. It's really, these are going the wrong way when you look at the revenue lines and adding FTEs. I've heard that consistently from a few members, and So that's the big takeaway for me, that we have some work to do still. So let's go back to Councilor Rosner and then we'll go to others.
Joe, Kim and Renee can go first. You already got to me. I just had some additional thoughts, but I can wait till the end. I don't want to cut in front of people.
Okay, I don't know who was after. Let's go to Councilor Browse, because I know Councilor Young has asked a few questions. So go ahead, Councilor.
Mine was more of a statement, and you kind of already addressed it, but a couple of things that have come to mind is what Adria just said. This is something that the library has been asking for a number of years now. It's not just this year, and each year it's been voted down. I would like for us to remember that we have just come through a very challenging time. Well, we're still in the midst of this very challenging time where staff have been very overtaxed, and there's a lot of just a lot of different feelings that are going on that's impacting lives. And what I'm hearing from some is that, again, there's a thought of saying no. And I want to caution us on that, just because of what that particular cost center is showing. The other thing that I would like to say is that I know the library and Adrian and the team they do a lot of data driven work and a lot of data driven decisions. And I'm guessing, based off of what I've heard in the past, that the programs and services that they're going to want to provide are data driven programs and services. And I really trust that. So those are just my few remarks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Young?
Yeah, just first, before I get to the question I had, just to piggyback, did we vote down adding library staff, or were they never part of the budgets you brought forward to us, Joe?
My recollection is it never made it in my proposed budget in the past. It's been,
so it wasn't anything budget committee voted down.
I would have to go back and confirm that, but that's my recollection.
Okay, that was mine too. Okay, I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that. The budget committee never denied the positions. Then my other question, I know you said the diversity audit, there were expenses in like 2 categories. So what is the overall cost of that?
So that would be 7,200.
And is that something that most of our surrounding libraries are doing, or is that something we can do internally? Or it sounds difficult, so probably not.
It is difficult. Yeah. So this actually speaks a bit to what the mayor was recommending about efficiency. So many libraries are endeavoring to do diversity audits, and when you do them internally, it requires staff to one by one examine every single record for every single book and movie and everything in the library system, and research it to see who is this author. Okay, let's say, for example, a book is about a person of color, but was it written by a person of color, or what we call is an own voice, and then evaluating the quality of that item. And so it's hugely labor intensive. And when libraries do it, which is considered a best practice, and most libraries are trying to do this now, when libraries do it, they can usually only do small sections at a time, and then it can take years and years to go through a library, and libraries aren't getting to it. Our main vendor for library books, which is called Ingram, has come up with a service where they can do the analysis for us. So we give them a file, like they have access to our catalog already because of the way we order books, and the new records get downloaded, and they can evaluate. They have librarians on staff. They've made those research decisions already. And granted, it's not with our community in mind, but they can then hand us a report and say, here are all the gaps. And then we can use our professional judgment too to say, yes, we agree with that or not. And then we can handpick the books we want to buy to fill the gaps.
Okay, thanks for that explanation. Then my last question was just on the strategic planning. Library went through that like 5 years ago, right? And we've completed that current strategic plan.
Right. So our last plan was 2017 to 2019. So in 2016, we were planning, and we had a consultant, and a good memory, 5 years ago. And so we had 3 main goals with dozens of objectives and so on. And Renee, when she was talking about data driven, she attended those meetings where we went through, I think we accomplished nearly 95% of all of the objectives laid out in that plan. And there's some that are carrying over. And we currently have strategic focus areas, which were developed with the board and staff as short-term for the pandemic to be more nimble, and because we had to pause our bigger strategic plan. But we need a longer-term plan, hopefully for 3 years again. And we'd like to do it in English and have Spanish language focus groups as well this time.
Okay, that's all my questions. I know we spent a lot of time on library.
So Matt Kaufman, do you have a question? I see your hand up, Matt.
Yeah, I just had a quick question in terms of the funding in excess of the county support. Do we benchmark against other cities in Washington County to see if we're making similar or at least like proportionate, if we're doing similar proportionate spending in excess of what we're receiving from the county?
Good question. So I wouldn't say benchmarks, because the cooperative is, there's a lot of variety within the cooperative. So there are a lot of comparisons, and then sometimes it makes sense to compare to every single other member library. And sometimes it makes sense to compare by population size, population served. Sometimes it makes more sense to compare to municipal libraries, which is not everybody. And so there is variation in the county. Each library, let's say for the municipal libraries, each municipal library has a slightly different percentage of city funding that's supplementing the WCCLS funding, but we're all right around the same. And Sherwood actually is right in the middle. So Hillsborough, maybe they have a lot more funding for the library. Beaverton, I think, is a little bit less. And every year each community does a little bit different. So I don't know for this current budget how we compare to the others. The nonprofits are a bit different. So like Cedar Mill, of course, is a nonprofit, and West Slope is run by the county. So it's harder to compare to those libraries. The budgeting is really different.
So Matt, I think
that we're middle of the pack.
That information back, if that's valuable. It would be interesting to have that.
Thank you. As a parent of 2 small children, I really appreciate all the services that the library provides.
Thank you. That's nice to hear.
All right. Sean, did you have your hand up and I missed it?
No, I had my hand up. I wanted to ask a little bit about ebooks, but I think Adrian covered a little bit of the larger picture, and I do think that that's probably more of a WCCLS area of discussion rather than specific to our budget here. So yeah, I don't have any questions, but
okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Councilor Rosner, I think we can come back to you now.
Yeah, just a couple comments and thoughts and a question. But first of all, I just want to say I'm a big supporter of the library. My kids have used it extensively, and the staff there does a wonderful job. I'm just, if what you're hearing from me is just concerned about these trends in terms of costs and the practical ability to the city to continue to absorb these trends. So we got to figure out how to reverse them moving forward. But part of that is, I think we need to start having really tough conversations with the county about this, because I'm very concerned, especially as they start having conversations around adjusting formulas, that they're just assuming that cities are going to be willing to pick up some of these deficits in terms of the 2% to 3% growth rate in the levy that we get from the county and what our costs are actually doing in the services, because at the same time they're making recommendations and plans around what kind of services we should be offering and fees and et cetera. So I think we need to have some really tough conversations with the county, because we can't continue to absorb costs that they're unwilling to compensate us through the levy system. And so that leads me to one question. Joe, you're on the executive committee.
Yes.
So will Kristen be taking your spot on that committee?
Yes.
Okay, so we will have representation on that committee as we move forward.
Correct.
With your departure. And then I think Matthew, that was a really great point about the comparing ourselves to the other districts. And just as a data point, and just with the libraries that are part of the cooperative, it'd be really interesting to see just on a percentage basis, how much, what percentage are they covering of the services? You know, I can't do the math in my head here, but it looks like we're going to be about 40 to 45% over what we get from the county. It would be interesting to see where the other libraries just sit, just in terms of that simple metric, because I think that kind of equalizes a lot of the other things you were talking about, Adrian, in terms of the differences between the libraries. Just include the ones that are in the cooperative, and that simple percentage I think would be useful for me. And then on the strategic planning, I'm not against doing a strategic plan. I would like that if we embark down that path, that we set some goals for that plan to look at this divergence between revenue coming in and revenue and expenses. And as part of that plan, trying to find ways to bring those lines back together.
Thank you. Can I ask you a clarifying question?
Yeah.
So when you were talking about the data point and the percent of services.
So it's a simple percentage. So like in our case, our overall budget's 1.4 million, and we get 9.8 million from the county. So that's a percent. You can equate that as a percentage. So if you have a larger library, the cash delta might be bigger, but what's the percentage? And that might be just a simple way to compare libraries in the system.
Yeah, I think I have access to that based on last year's numbers.
Awesome.
Yeah, Lisa Tattersall, the manager for WCCLS, prepared that for the levy cycle.
Yeah.
So, I'll look that up. Okay,
Thank
good.
you,
'Cause when I use the word services, I think like, what are we offering? I thought,
Yeah.
oh, you
Gotcha.
want that. Those could be a really long list.
No, just kind of that simple number, I
Yeah.
think would be great. And I just want to reiterate, our library does a wonderful job. And when my kids were going to middle school, at the old middle school, they were down there every day after school. It was awesome. Really appreciate all the staff. I just want to make sure we can continue to do that. And that's where my concerns come in. So.
Thank you. Thank you.
Just real quickly, I meant to make the point on the revenue side that we're getting from the county, 2%, to be blunt with our friends in the county and the region, is a joke. It should be 3.5%, 4% every year, because property taxes automatically with zero growth goes up 3% a year. So we should be getting an increase of at least 3% a year. So there is an argument to pause potentially things for this year until a new IGA is clarified, so that we can have some certainty and know from county contribution anyways what we can expect. Very frustrating.
Yeah, thank you. I need to double check the percentage too. I think it's been 2.5 in the past, and I believe it's meant to be 3% going forward, but that's still not speaking to what you're asking for.
And understanding what all the different libraries, all, not just the city libraries, because there's non-city libraries that are all in the network, what they do would be interesting. But we cannot support this trend, in my opinion. We're hoping to be in a position where we can do bigger and greater things. We do not have a sustainable community with our tax base. So I'm thinking still in my own little 5-year window of trying to take big steps to improve our internal general fund situation for all departments.
So there's a number of hands up. I think some of them were from before. Does anyone else have a question that we haven't covered on library yet?
This is Nancy Taylor, and I want to make a statement on the library, and that is, I don't have children. I'm a user of the library, and Adrian, you all do a great job. So thank you.
Thank you, Nancy.
You're here.
Thank you. I wonder if the group would want to see at a next meeting, would it make very much of a difference if these personnel requests started off as temporary requests?
So Adrian, I mean, if you guys want to talk about that, we can, but I think we can also talk about that offline and decide what we want to come back with and prepare and what information we're getting together.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. So it's 10 till 9. Let's keep going with Fieldhouse.
Okay, so we're moving on to Fieldhouse. I am confident that this one will go a bit quicker. Lance Gilgan is with us this evening, and Lance is our Fieldhouse manager, and he is here to tell you what we have been doing this year and some of the challenges that we faced, and you'll see that reflected in our revenue, but I don't want to steal his thunder, but go ahead, Lance. You're muted. There we go.
There we go. Good evening, everyone. As you can see with the slide that's up, we, as Kristen said, I don't know that I have much thunder after the last 14 months, but the field house has basically been closed for 14 months. We had a short session where we opened in November, and then the governor came out and closed us down again. So we opened back up once again once we've got to high risk, but it's pretty limited. You can see on the slide that I have reduced materials and services by 25%, and personal services by 0.85%, but I've also reduced revenue by 48%. That being said, the revenue reduction is reduced because we do not know how long we're going to be in the situation we're in. We're having some trouble now trying to restart things because nobody wants to play with a mask on, and being a indoor fitness center, those are the rules, excuse me. We do have to, have our teams and our rentals have masks on, and we are seeing some resistance to that. So, I've cut everything I can cut as far as I can, as far as personal services, materials and services, and things like that. But our revenue is also cut quite tremendously. So I'm open to answer any questions that you might have, and we can go from there.
Lance, if I could chime in and add something real quick here. On the personnel services, you're seeing that there was a slight reduction, and that's for our seasonal on-calls. Obviously, we weren't bringing them into the field house. Dennis was still charging and has still been charging his time to the field house, though he has been over at the senior center the majority of the year helping out with our meal program over there. So we reallocated our staffing resources, and he was able to go over and help with meal prep and delivery. So though you're seeing the personnel services stay consistent, really a lot of that was meant to help the senior center.
Yeah, and Dennis has done a great job. Maya has appreciated every minute that he's been there, and he's enjoying what he's doing. And I'm just happy that we were able to keep him employed over the last 14 months. Tim, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. First of all, thanks, Lance, for everything you do. Appreciate it. I was just curious, since we're no longer doing the field maintenance and field scheduling for the school district because they canceled that contract with us. Has that changed your hours? How are those been distributed? Because I think you were doing a lot of the scheduling, if I remember right.
Yeah, and that's under the recreation and sports budget, which is coming up next, but I'll go ahead and answer that now. It has changed to a certain extent, but I'm still taking care of Snyder Park baseball and soccer, which will come up in the next slide, I believe, or maybe the slide after that, of what we're doing there. But I'm still scheduling those two fields And there has been quite a demand for those fields, to be honest with you, especially after the school district decided to end their IGA with us.
I suspect they're going to be the nicest looking fields in town here pretty quick. Just guessing.
They won't be brown like some of the other ones are, let's put it that way.
Awesome. That answers my question. Thanks, Lance.
You're welcome. Doug, you have a question?
Yeah, I do. So first of all, great to hear about Dennis and the flexibility and being able to like flex staff around and keep everyone employed, but also, you know, move the bodies where we need them. So that I love to hear that across department kind of partnership. You know, first of all, I'd say I think there's a ton of pent up demand. So at the point when we do get, you know, when we do get the green light to have maskless activities back in the field house again, I think our revenue is gonna take off, which is really exciting. So I'm hoping this number, which is the right to be conservative, but I go on a limb and hopefully I think we'll beat it. My question is, and this may not be for you, Lance, but maybe someone else can chime in here with the new rules around, you know, you can do stuff if you show your vaccination card. Is there an opportunity for us to do something like that and allow people to play without a mask, or is that not even an option? If people, you know, can show proof of vaccination, can they play without a mask or no?
My understanding, according to the guidelines, the mask mandate has not changed for indoor fitness or athletic facilities at this point in time.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Stay tuned, Councilor Scott. Hopefully.
Say that again?
I was going to say stay tuned, hopefully soon.
So it may behoove us to start thinking about how we would operationalize something like that, if we get the go ahead.
Yep.
Mayor Mays, you have a question?
Yeah, kudos to just dealing with, I mean, it goes across departments, but being flexible in this past year, you know, helping out in other areas, you know, so that we keep everybody employed and busy, supporting wherever we can help the community. I appreciate your conservative revenue dollars. Hopefully by July 1, we'll be in a new world when it comes to all activity in this pandemic, so that you can have the headache of trying to fit everybody in there and manage it. And yeah, and then who knows, now that, you know, with this week events, we might have fresh conversations with our community partners, school district. I don't know. We'll see.
I'm hoping your July 1 date is right. You know, we have sent some emails out and kind of taken a survey of the teams and some of our renters about, you know, hey, are you willing to come back? We can open up to a certain extent right now, but you do have to have a mask on. And we've had quite a little bit of resistance to the masks indoor thing. So I'm hoping you're right. I'm hoping, you know, end of June, early July, that the mask mandate's over and that we can, you know, start running leagues full bore again and start running rentals full bore again. Nancy, do you have a question?
No, if I have my hand up, I'll put it down. Sorry.
Okay. Councilor Browse looks like her hand is up.
That is correct.
Hi, Lance. I was just wondering, is the difference between the field house and, say, a Planet Fitness, the difference because there's actually a sport taking place? Because you can go into Planet Fitness and not wear a mask if you've been vaccinated. Is that the difference?
I'm not sure how to answer that, to be honest with you, Renee. I don't know that we, I'm going to say probably yes, because we're playing a sport that is a minimal contact sport. They still have to have a mask on if they're indoors.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Kristen, did you have something more on that, or?
I was just going to add that currently for our city facilities, we are still requiring masks as well, and do not have a process yet in place or have decided if we are going to be checking vaccination cards. So that's something that we do need to think about and look into and come up with procedure as to how that's going to happen.
Gotcha. Thank you both.
Are there any other questions about the field house?
We just
Thank you, everybody, for your time.
track since Nance is going right now.
Yes, please. Yeah, if you can fast forward to sports and recreation. Thank you.
Okay, looks like I'm on again. Sports and recreation, you will notice that once again, our revenue is down by 18.31%, and that our personnel services are down by 25.12%. As you all know, or at least all the council knows, the school district had decided to take their fields back in-house and in the IGA that they had with the city of Sherwood. So in that respect, I will no longer be receiving facility use fees from our youth leagues. And the only revenue I will have on the recreation sports side is the hourly rate that I charge for Snyder baseball or Snyder soccer. So that's why that revenue is down quite a little bit from what it was before. Anybody's got any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer them. I do think that there may be a positive side to this as far as the Snyder Park facility is concerned. I think I'll probably make more money off of it now than I did in the past, which will help us in the long run when it comes to a turf replacement up there in the next, 8 to 10 years, whatever that is.
Great. Thank you, Lance.
Do we set aside some amount of that money for eventual turf replacement?
As far as I know, we do. Yeah, I code that differently than I code anything else that we take in. And I think that and David probably answer that question better, but in the past that has been coded different and gone to a turf replacement fund.
Yes, I don't have that exact figure, but Councilor Scott, I can get that for you for the next meeting.
No, that's fine. Let you answer the question.
But yeah, we do. That was something Katie implemented a few years back. So there's been money.
Yeah, that's good. And then when we need to do it, the money's there instead of like, oh my gosh, we got to come up with $1 million or something. So great. Thanks.
Exactly.
Any other questions about recreation and sports?
Thank you, Lance. Before we move forward, I'm going to do a check-in with time. We usually end sometime 9 to 9:30. I think a good potential is for us to finish community services. There's a few more departments within it, and then maybe start fresh with public works next week. But we'll stay as long as the committee wants to stay. But that was a suggestion I wanted to put on the table.
I personally like that suggestion.
I agree.
A
good place to break.
Yep.
All right, Kristen, I think you got the green light to keep going.
Great, thank you. So Shanda Hall is here this evening, and she is going to talk to us. She is the manager over at the Art Center. So Shanda, I don't see you.
All right.
You are. Hello.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. As you know, it has been quite a year for everyone here, and especially in the large event space and live performance realm. So it continues to be quite a ride, but things are looking up here at the Art Center. I particularly am proud that we've been able to really lean into our mission of providing services and serving the city of Sherwood without pause over the last 14 months. So luckily, your gorgeous Sherwood Center for the Arts is flexible and open and was made for a moment like this where where the building can be used for many different purposes, especially if we don't have the ability to do live performances. So our goal, as you can see from the numbers and the detail, we're on page 72 of the budget book, and 72A is details. You can see where we have cut as much as we can without sacrificing quality. And our goal is to be realistic and yet conservative in our projections. And you'll see there also continuing to provide excellent service and continue to add value that the Arts Center brings. We feel really good about numbers going forward as we're getting kids registering for our summer arts camp. We are booking still 18 months in advance for rentals. And I think people are feeling optimistic again as we look at 2022. So like Councillor Scott said, there is some pent up demand, not just for getting back on the field and playing, but getting back in a concert and seeing a live performance. We're definitely seeing that. I wanted to point out a few specific numbers that you may have noticed that may stand out to you. On 6011 personnel services, you will see there's an increase. Mostly that is due to an anticipated increase in on-call hours this fall. We have a maternity leave of one of our staff members. 6504, you'll notice that we have a one-time purchase of computer software, and the software we're using right now is Max Galaxy, and that is served us well, but it's becoming defunct. So we need to move to a different system, and that will actually benefit the entire city. It'll be used by the field house, senior center, parks, public works. So I think it'll be a positive new software move as far as usability and user friendliness. And that is reflected in there. Then you'll notice at 6314 repairs and maintenance, that is just reflecting the reality of our now 6-year-old building with very specific audiovisual and systemic needs that serve to help us optimize the use of the building and just maintain all those systems that need to work perfectly and reliably in order to be a rental venue. Let's see. One interesting thing that we've noticed just as far as the space being a rental that I wanted to share with you all is that we've actually received a lot of new visitors to our space inquiring about renting it for the year. And we've actually found a lot of new renters due to schools being closed. So that's been an interesting side effect of this last year. And we've been able to form some really good relationships with some ongoing folks going forward. It's been an interesting time. I would love to open it up for questions, and I cannot see the hands raising. So if someone, oh, good. Thank you, Kristen.
So kind of echoing some of our conversation we had during the library topic. I mean, you know, expenditures being, you know, double or even potentially a little more than double revenue is definitely a concern. Also seeing that our personnel services, you know, is up 40% since FY19, but our actual revenue was going down even pre-COVID. So those are things that jump off the page to me. You know, so I think I like what you said. I wanted to say this when you talk about the software. I love that it sounds like we're moving in the direction of kind of a single software system across the city. I think, you know, we should always be driving toward the goal of if I am a citizen and want to book a space in the city, or a business or whatever wants to book a space in the city, I should be able to log in and see all the spaces available and make that booking in one place and not have to go to 5 different locations. So it sounds like we're on that path, and I think that's really, really exciting. So good to hear that. And I'll just leave it there.
Thank you, Councillor Scott.
Yeah, and before we moved on to the next one, if I can just comment on the personnel services, just to be clear, we have not increased staffing over there. If we do have on-calls working, they are only working if we have rentals coming in. So we have not increased our FTEs unless it's been on-calls due to rentals over the last couple of years, with the exception being what Shanda just mentioned, that we're anticipating needing some extra help as we have a staff personnel on maternity leave.
Yeah, I'm just commenting on the numbers. I mean,
Yes, no, absolutely. I
40%,
just
so.
sure that you were aware of that. Thank you. I believe Councillor President Rosner had his hand up next.
Yes.
Well, I was just going to comment that, well, Doug stole my question on the software, actually my comment on the software. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I was really glad to hear you guys moving forward that. And I just appreciate the pragmatic approach you took to budgeting and working within your means and trying to strike that balance between revenue and expenses. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I've lost track, but maybe Councillor Garland was next.
Councillor Garland.
Yeah, sorry, I said just a quick question. I'm wondering, so you talk about the software and it sounds like it's in your budget here for the scheduling, but it's being used across is all of it in your budget, or is it spread out amongst the other people who are using it? Because I know in the past, there's been a lot of emphasis on the Art Center and revenues and not being a moneymaker. So my initial pass at this is it seems perhaps a bit unfair to the Art Center to have this software, if it is exclusively in your budget. It seems to be adding some unfair weight to your already struggle in justifying in some manner your budget. So I guess that's my question.
If I can chime in here.
Yeah.
So that is going to come out of our one-time expenses. So it's not going to end up hitting just the Art Center. Also, a few years ago, when we had to purchase software, it might have been 4 or 5 years ago, Public Works actually purchased it at that time because we were using it for park shelter reservations, or at least participated in using it. And then there will be an annual fee, and we do need to look at how can we share that. Right now, it's mainly community services that is using it, so I'm less concerned. And then park shelter reservations are using it as well, but really they're only utilizing it 3 or 4 months out of the year. So we've discussed that as well, though, how to make it reflective in all of the different areas and make sure that it's fair.
I mean, I guess as long as this committee is aware of this aspect of it, then I'm fine with that. But the casual observer who may not be watching these meetings or in these meetings may have that question. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Yes, Paul has his hand up.
Yeah, I've seen several posts and rumors about the Regal Theater opening up. And will that affect the Arts Center as well when that happens?
So the Regal Theater tends to, that's a great question, by the way. Thank you. The Regal Theater tends to serve a different population. I haven't seen us go head to head with a movie theater quite so much. We do more live performance and cultural events. We do serve under the same indoor entertainment guidance for COVID.
And Katie has her hand up.
Yeah, sorry, I'm back to this software thing again. Just I was noticing the cost in here, and I work at a school district, and we last year implemented a facility rental software that's free, and we have made substantial amounts of money from that. And we even had Netflix filming a TV show in there all year during COVID. So I don't know if the city has looked into like some of the free options. I know the one we use is Facilitron, which is like a big company, and their advertisement has been really great, being able to rent out all of our facilities that we have at the high school and our pool and that sort of thing. So I just was curious what kind of, if you'd really looked into the softwares yet, or if that's still like in a preliminary phase.
A couple of years back, we did a deep dive into a lot of the different options for software. We also utilize it for class management and people who are taking classes at the Art Center and selling tickets. So facility rentals is just one portion of it. But we did research quite a few different options that are out there, but we'll definitely take a look into that. But so far, this was one of the least expensive options for what we needed the software to be able to do.
If I could just jump in on that, because I've seen Facilitron used in other places through my old work life. The way they make money is by taking a percentage every time a person uses a credit card to pay for something. So, and that can be a great model. It just depends on what their percentage is.
Right. And it's worked. I work at a school district, and it's worked really great for us because we didn't have to pay anything, and they did all of the implementation work for the software, and they work on all of the advertisement and the website management. So it's just something to consider, because I know we interviewed probably 5 or 6 different facility rental companies and ended up going with Facilitron because of the free cost.
Thank you.
And it does seem like at the Art Center, we use it mostly for parents registering for classes, adults registering for classes. It's used mostly for those purposes for us. But thank you, Katie. Any other questions?
Jeremy has his hand up.
Okay.
Shanda, you're going to get a huge free pass from me. You were doing great things in 19 and 20. I mean, realize the revenue from 20 is only 2/3, 3/4 of the year, and then you closed. So you were doing great before the pandemic. And I like your conservative proposal for this year. And you're heading in all the right directions, firing on all cylinders, and I know you'll get back there. So grow, and as you know, we'll get the revenue number closer to the total departmental budget number, in 23.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor President Rosner, did you have another question?
Oh, I was just gonna say something similar. Because we've always talked about getting to break even, and against all odds, you were making awesome progress to that. It was really great to see, and this darn pandemic kind of set us back, but I'm confident you'll keep moving down that path. So thank you again.
Thank you.
That is all the hands I see, Shanda.
Okay. Thank you for looking for hands. Thank you all very much. Yeah, I appreciate your words. And if any other questions pop into your mind, I'm happy to take those anytime this week.
Thank you.
So one more important component of the community services is the senior center. So
there we go. Okay.
I'm good. Okay, found all my buttons.
Yay. Maya Burbank is our manager over at the Marjorie Stewart Senior Center, and she is here this evening to talk to you about what we have going on over there.
Hello, everybody, and good evening. Thank you for staying late this evening so I can get this off my chest. As you can see, we've had a really busy year this year. It's been one of our busiest with our meals served. But you'll notice on page 73A, line item 4365, that we had a dip in our projected budget for this year. That is because that $27,117 does not include about $11,100 in scholarship funds that we've submitted to CARES Act funds. So that's being reimbursed to a non-departmental fund. So with that included, our projected income will be the 39,937, actually above the amount that we originally projected. So that's nice, considering that our, of course, line item for 4363 facility rental is quite a bit lower. That's a pretty obvious reason, based on we didn't really get to have rentals for the entire year, which is a substantial amount of our income. You'll also see an increase in the line 6498 from the adopted to the projected amounts for this year. That's other operating materials and supplies, and that's our food cost for serving meals. And that's also what we had to spend to adopt to single-use serving items. Going into the new year, we will have to probably keep up that single-use amount for a while. We're hoping that we'll be able to open up and begin to have regular in-building meal service, but we need to have a higher amount for that, as well as increased meal costs, because our numbers have gone up so drastically. We have served over 10,000 meals since we shut down from COVID. March 13th of 2020 is when we closed our building, and we opened up for delivery and pickup service on the 16th of that same month, and have continued on with that meal service ever since. We have seen a huge increase in our scholarship numbers, the number of individuals who aren't able to pay for their meals. So the scholarship meals that we've requested for reimbursement has been a large chunk of what we've been doing. The COVID year has definitely shown us where need exists in our community, and how to visit those people who are in need that we might not have been serving in the past. We also switched over to our online classes, social groups, and services. All of the classes that we hold from the center are ones that I lead myself. We have been able to partner with some groups to be able to hold online events, such as we had a fall reduction seminar. Next week, we are having an all-day Celebrating Healthy Aging seminar. We worked with the county sheriff to work on decreasing elder abuse and scams, and we worked with the county on many different educational products. We've worked to isolate COVID isolation and loneliness through personal delivery programs, one-on-one experiences with delivery drivers. We've had the online groups and telephone calls. We've also worked with the Friends of the Marjorie Stewart Center to provide gifts and cards to our meal participants. We had a great Santa's for Sherwood seniors this year. I don't know if you guys saw that, but we were able to get Santa to deliver presents from the Sherwood community to everybody on the meal service, and some people who just nominated people that they knew could use a present that year. We were happy to give Easter baskets to seniors on our meal route. We had a lot of response to that. A lot of people that had not gotten an Easter basket in 40 or 50 years, and we're excited to have that gift this spring. We have also been able to have third parties in our building. We were lucky, one of the lucky sites to be able to actually have AARP tax service. And for the first couple weeks to months that we were doing the AARP tax service, we were the only game in town and had people, well, only game in town, only game in county. We had people coming from all over Washington County, Marion County, Multnomah County, Yamhill, Clackamas, just to get their taxes done and get service through our center. We were able to meet that entire need. Every single person that called was able to get an appointment and get in. We also were able to reopen for foot care. So that is a huge need in the older adult community. So we've been able to address that. And we're actually also able to offer flu shots in the fall. We've assisted with COVID vaccine signups. We've had a lot of people that, especially at the beginning, weren't able to arrange for their own vaccinations. So we helped them and facilitated those with appointments and rides. And we also worked with Washington County Sheriff to help mitigate elder abuse situations. I've also attended conferences and seminars to be prepared for reopening, both locally. I meet monthly with other Oregon senior centers to see what they're doing, what their programs look like, how they're addressing various situations. And throughout the pandemic, I've moderated family discussions on aging relatives and how to operate with the isolation and the loneliness concerns within a family as well. So we've been very busy at the center between the meal service and the rest of the senior services that we provide for our city. And we would like to take everything that we've learned about the extended needs of the Sherwood community and help that to guide us in our programming going forward. Because we really want to make sure that we're addressing those needs of the people that we had missed previously, the homebound seniors, those who are not able to make it to the senior center, and who may be interested in programming but not meals, or meals and not programming. We want to make sure we're not leaving anybody out of the equation of our service. With all of this, I am the only full-time employee at the Sherwood Senior Center. We have Dominic in the kitchen. He's wonderful. He's a part-time employee that is our chef. He does all the meal preparing, ordering, menu preparation, and so forth. But everything else I administer. With that, it's been very difficult to work on kind of any grander plans, any future planning, any kind of fail-safing to get ready for the movement in time and get ready for generations to come with the senior center. Because I have to just take care of the human need that is right in front of me every day, of which there is a lot. And with the programming and the complexity that has grown with the senior center over time, I need to be able to provide the level of programming and assistance that our community needs. For example, due to changes in some volunteer schedules, when we first opened up our tax appointments, we didn't have volunteers. We had one volunteer on one day a week during the tax season. So that was exciting. We were getting about 20 calls an hour for tax appointments, for tax advice, on top of all of our meal requests and other service requests. And that is something that I was taking care of on my own. And it was a very exciting time. It was great to see that level of engagement with the center, but it was something that I definitely needed help with. And this has happened when we have other programs before, and our volunteers are our lifeblood, but there are some things that because of various restrictions, they are not able to do. One of these is the registration software that Shanda was talking about earlier. I am so excited to switch and have a new software, but it also will have a lot of training hours involved. And to be able to have an employee that can help do that, both train others, but be the one person that I have to train and not need to retrain 5 people a week to get up and running in that system, as well as with all of our other programming systems. And also, I also would like to have that part-time staff person that I'm looking to also add to the senior center to be able to help with the administration of our food program. We are going to need to do a hybrid program, at least for the foreseeable future, whether that means our meal program or just our activity programs. That is yet to see, but I definitely will need some assistance, but with that part-time employee. It's something that we've needed for a long time, and I would love for you to be able to consider that for the senior center. And with that, I've got some numbers here in front of me. I'm ready to take some questions. Can I get a hand?
I don't see any hands.
I'll just jump in. This is Sean. Echo what a lot of people said. Not only the senior center, especially, but I mean the library and the art center, and the way that you have all adapted during this pandemic is stunning. I mean, really, because I mean your mission was fairly focused before. I think you had a broad range of programming and everything, but I mean you had a base, and people came to you, and clearly when this pandemic happened, you flipped that the other way. You turned it inside out, and you went out to our community. And understanding that our pandemic early on, it was known that how seriously it affected our senior community, and Sherwood has a large senior community, and the way that you all just managed on a dime, like you said, to get out and start changing the way you do things is just remarkable. And so I just really wanted to point that out and commend you on all the hard work that you did. I know that I know a couple of people in my life that are regulars at the senior center, and I know their life has changed, and there's been moments of loneliness, and that community is a bit lost. And so to have you all be actively out finding them, and like you said, identifying people that we didn't know about before this pandemic. And so when we get out of this pandemic, having that expanded base of people in our community that we can serve. The senior center isn't a bottom line, how much money are we making kind of thing. This is truly what you are meant to do for our community. So just really wanted to throw that out there and say thank you for everything you did and all the hard work that you all do there.
Thank you so much. It's been a great experience to work with everybody in our department, and everybody in the whole city has really stepped up to make sure that we've been able to serve this mission. Public Works has helped us serve during snowstorms. The library has helped us with book clubs and getting books to people, especially at the beginning of the pandemic. The Arts Center has helped with finding grant money to help with participation programs and programs to cheer up our population. So that has been a wonderful gift. And the fact that we are one of the only hot meal deliveries during the pandemic in the whole state really speaks to the Chef Dominic and his ability to pivot to get this out there for everybody. The COVID has been obviously a terrible thing to happen, but it has really helped us identify what we can do more.
I'm not sure if you can see the hands. Paul.
I can't see hands. I'm sorry.
Nope, that's fine. I'll call on him. Paul has
Okay.
his.
Yeah, I just wanted to echo what Sean said. I've heard a lot of things from a lot of people. I have a network of elderly people in Sherwood, and those that use the programs have just said marvelous things about what you do. You and Dominic, they love Dominic's food. And I just wanted to compliment you both on your efforts.
Thank you. I'll send that on to Dominic too.
Councillor Scott, did you have a question?
Not a question, just an anecdote. Actually, today I went out and helped fill in and deliver meals today, and it was such a wonderful experience. I just met some really great people, and they were so excited to see me and so happy and thankful and just really, really cool people. And I will tell you, the food looked and smelled amazing. I think my car probably still smells wonderful. The last meal almost did not make it to it. It almost disappeared, but I powered through and delivered it. And I just it was a really great experience. I'm looking forward to doing it again next week, and maybe find some time to do it again in the future. But just kudos to the staff and Chef Dominic, because man, that was a good looking meal.
Thank you for holding out and not eating that. And we really appreciated that. Thank you for volunteering.
Council President
Rosner. Drivers, so if you know anybody, send them away.
So I just want to echo everything everybody has said. You guys have done an amazing job. In fact, the whole city has done an amazing job. The library, Public Works, police, administration, everybody pivoting and through this. And just as a note, Maya, I remember when you started, people were like, "Who's this new person coming in to run the senior center?" They were a little unsure, but boy, you talk to them now, they're very protective of you. They love you over there. You do a great job. So kudos to you and your staff. And the fact that very limited resources, you've made so much happen during this pandemic, and I really appreciate it. The only thing I wanted to ask, and on the I'm fully supportive of this budget, by the way. The only thing I would ask is on the revenue side, two things. One, and I already talked to Kristen about this, but there may be some opportunities to get some reimbursements from Washington County for the food program, which we should pursue. If we can make that happen, that would be awesome. And then I would also say, I want to be really careful I say this, on the prices that we're charging for the facilities for, I just want to say non-senior use, right? You know, are there opportunities, because it's, I'm shooting myself in the foot here because I'm a member of the Rotary Club, but it's a really inexpensive space, and there might be some opportunities on that side, just to take a look at it and comparing it to other facilities and what we're charging. So, but the rest of this is great. You guys have done a great job, built a lot of goodwill in the community, and I think even post-pandemic, there's going to be a lot of people that want to continue to use the service. So, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I have every indication that most if not all will be continuing to join us either in person or through delivery or pickup options. And we are in conversations with the county just to kind of explore the options there to see where reimbursements can come from, to see if that will work with our program and what we can provide to our community. Because we want to make sure that they're able to get their needs met and not have that cut off at all by any restrictions that might be part of that. But it's something we're definitely working on and are in continuous talks with right now. And as far as the other one, you know, it's lovely to have something that's so accessible to our community members. We want to make sure that everybody has access to public spaces in our city, but that is something that we can definitely look at in the future. For this budget year, it just did not feel like the time to really do that, but that's something that we might talk about in the future.
Perfect, thank you.
Mayor Mays had a comment or question.
Yes.
Great job this last year. As the son of someone who jumped in and got the delivery during the pandemic, my mother is a huge fan. She will be volunteering. She will be volunteering, I believe, at the senior center when she finally retires, because she is at some age north of typical retirement. But she is swearing to me that she wants to actually pull the trigger this year. And I said, well, what are you going to do? You can't retire unless you have a plan. She goes, I'm going to help at the senior center, or I'm going to go and do programming at the senior center, and I'm going to go to the senior center for lunch. So we'll see how that all goes. But she's certainly a big fan of you and everybody that has volunteered to help deliver and help. And she's even talking about wanting to do Tai Chi, and she'd do it online when you're doing it now, but that's a day she works, and so she can't take, so she's all excited about Tai Chi. So anyways, I'm kudos all around, very supportive of your budget. I do believe that you might have capacity issues in the dining hall. A nice problem to have, I think. And
it's a good problem, but we'll need more volunteers. So tell her to come on down.
Right, exactly. And then for all the underage guests, you know, as that happens, charge us more when we show up to have a meal. So to boost that revenue number, and a big donation fishbowl is always a good idea. So kudos.
Thank you. Thank you.
Council President Rosner, did you have another comment, or is your hand just still up?
Oh, you're on mute.
Oh, hand is down.
Okay.
Sorry about that. I forgot.
Oh, no problem. I think that is it, Maya. Thank you so much.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Maya.
Kristen, you have one more.
I have two more, but they will be very quick, I promise.
Oh,
I've even
all right.
volunteers, and then
Right. Forgot about this one.
I think it's up to us how quick they are.
That's true.
There's not much to it, but we could keep talking, that's for sure. So on events and volunteers, this is Tammy, our volunteer coordinator, her programs and her time, as well as events that we put on throughout the city, Music on the Green, Movies in the Park. I do want to point out, I'm on page 71A under facility rental, which is 4363. that $40,000 that you're seeing. Unfortunately, I do not have $40,000 coming in. I'm not sure what that is for. That was a coding error, but that will be removed on your final document. There is a significant increase that I would want to point out in personal services and on salaries and wages. And that again is another coding deal. That's really support from Public Works for our events. So they weren't necessarily always coding their time that way, or not to this extent. And that's what that is. David looked into that for me, but that's where you're seeing that increase. We have not hired more people. It's just support for our events. We are planning on doing 3 Music on the Greens this summer, starting towards the end of July, and 2 movies in the park. So I adjusted the budget accordingly. Any questions on events and volunteers? Nope.
Just to thank you for working hard to bring back some of those summer events for our community.
Yes, we're looking forward to it. Okay. Community services management, there's not too much to this budget. Again, the largest increase or increase you're going to see is in personnel services, and that is my time. And some of that is going to be reflective of either step increases, or I think that we also anticipated some of the increases from me helping out with Joe's position when he is gone, though that may shift and be coded into city manager. Other than that, everything else is staying pretty steady. I think the materials and services one, David, I believe that is an error as well, where we still had something in there from this fiscal year for the community psyche grant.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to rest assured the committee is still expenditure of the general fund. It's just going to get shifted over through adjusting journal entry. So it's correctly reflected into the ending fund balance, but
okay,
because all these grant funds were included in non-D or non-departmental, I want to move the expenditures there, so it's just all captured into one department.
Yes.
With the exception of community development management, just because they ran that business grant program and all the work there, and we originally paid it out of their prior fiscal year, so I wanted to kind of keep that program all together.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to point that out because that was one that we had talked about. Thank you.
Yeah, we've got a little cleanup work to do, but it's
no problem.
All legitimate expenditures.
Any questions on community services management? Okay. Thank you.
So I think that's where we were going to stop this evening. There's still a portion of Public Works in the general fund, but I think we can start next week with those, since it's now 9:45.
I'll just say quickly, maybe for the whole budget committee, Joe, thank you for all your hard work on the budgets over the years, and you'll be missed. And everybody come down to the Art Center tomorrow between 1 to 3 to give your goodbyes to Joe. Short and sweet.
Thank you.
Do I have to hug him?
Yes.
Is that allowed in the Art Center?
Make sure you prove of vaccination.
I'll bring my card if you bring yours, Tim.
I'm going to forget my card, so I don't have to hug you.
Oh, but yeah, kudos. We should drag on until 11. Just make him stay up real late for his last.
Hey, why not?
I don't know that our department heads would appreciate that too much.
Everyone can go but Joe. I just wanted to echo what Kim said. I really appreciate all the staff's hard work that went into this. Great start, and looking forward to the next meeting.
You're here.
All right.
Meeting adjourned.
Kim, you're not committee chair.
Can I make a motion?
Is that my cue to adjourn us? All right, with that, then I will adjourn this budget committee meeting at 9:41 p.m.
Thanks, Katie.
Thank you, everyone.